Suddenly, a magical gate opened for the inhabitants of one of the worlds. Various monsters emerged through this gate, and this time an A-rank dragon appeared, but the wave measuring device gave an error. Catching such a creature was an impossible task for humans, so when they saw the monsters, the partners decided to retreat. The despair that crept in from there brought humanity to the brink of destruction, and it descended to exterminate all living things. The dragon that emerged from the gate let out a ferocious roar when it noticed the fear in the people. One of the men expertly assessed the situation and was sure that it was all due to a malfunction in the meter. Despite their situation, the human race decided to resist and did not intend to retreat. The weapons used to fight the giant monsters were hunters who acted as mercenaries for destruction. The guy allowed his partner to engage in battle with the huge dragon. Hearing the order, the girl immediately rushed from her place and decided to greet the monster on Earth. The disgusting huge lizard seemed ugly and too weak to her. The monster tried to resist the little human who believed in her strength. With one blow, the dragon managed to knock the attacking girl off her trajectory. The men were shocked that the experienced hunter had been struck down with a single blow. The companions thought it best to retreat because the dead cannot be brought back from the other world, but they could still save themselves. It would be much easier for the guy if this commotion died down as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, he listened to the girl who assured him that this dragon was just a flying piece of trash. If the dragon did not have such thick skin, it would have already died from her blows because its enormous size did not give it an advantage over her. The girl intended to draw the blood of this lizard-like monster right now. A powerful blow from the human immediately struck the dragon's body, which was unable to resist. The blow only made the monster's head tilt, and it became even more angry at them. The guy continued to calmly watch what was happening and did not rush to intervene in the battle, but suddenly he took out his weapon, deciding to attack the dragon. The man was sure that the young man would not be able to hold out against the dragon, because he was only rank B, but the hunter himself did not care. All it took was one mistake by the dragon for the hunters to deliver a crushing blow. His partner asked Maria to cover him, and she was delighted because the time had finally come for a serious battle. The man and the monster looked at each other to understand their opponent's weaknesses. The dragon attacked first, but his blows were ineffective, and while he was busy with this, the man tried to sneak up on him. The guy drew all the weapons he had while Maria managed to climb onto the monster's head. The dragon began to suck in air, preparing to breathe fire at his opponent, but the girl had no intention of letting him do so. A powerful blow struck the creature's jaw, making it impossible for it to attack. Maria signaled to Kong Jun that now was the right moment to launch a counterattack. Without a word or a move, the guy approached the monster and attacked it with his sword. One legendary cut from the hunter decapitated the dragon, which did not expect such a thing from humans. The creature's head separated from its body and fell to the ground with a loud sound. The partners had once again managed to destroy another monster. Sometime later, the other hunters who had arrived were impressed by what they had heard about the battle, because thanks to the combined efforts of Maria and Kong Jun, they managed to obtain the necessary resources from the dragon's body. Unlike other B-rank mercenaries, this pair was much faster, but the partners did not consider themselves super strong. The dragon was destroyed by the hunter, and Kang Jun hoped that these people would divide their spoils fairly. Maria noticed her partner's concern as he had his own opinion about what was happening. The customer did not understand what the hunter meant by dividing the spoils. The man made it clear that this time there were more members in the squad, so they needed to take much more resources to pay everyone for their work. Kang Juna was surrounded and ordered to hand over his sword and equipment if he wanted to survive. They knew that these two were quite strong hunters, but could they really do anything with so many opponents? The young man laughed when he heard the man's threats because he was convinced that the gun could not harm him. Seeing the confidence in the young man's eyes, the man immediately became frightened because he thought that Kang Jun would immediately obey them upon seeing the weapon. The experienced hunter had encountered similar situations many times before, and therefore knew how to behave in such cases. Hunters never worked for free, and so in the lawless area of Uar in Apington County, a man who refused to pay the hunters for their help was killed. This seemed impossible because when a large number of monsters began to die, the number of human casualties also increased. Maria was convinced that life was becoming harsher every day, so she was not surprised by the betrayal of her clients. Kang Jun knew that at the very beginning such efforts could have captured the monster. This kind of activity lifted them up, and so their business flourished, and Eater began extracting dragon blood. Maria compared him to a scoundrel who could not get enough of the items he had obtained, but the young man did not refuse the extra income, and therefore intended to take everything that could be sold. The girl made sure that he did not forget to take anything from the people he had killed. Kang Jun didn't care how he made money, because with it, he could achieve his goals. After collecting valuable items, the guy used a fire spell to incinerate the lifeless bodies. The bonfire of human bodies smelled unpleasant, but the hunters couldn't do anything about it because they couldn't just leave the lifeless bodies there. Maria tried to find out what Kang Jun was going to do next. She wanted him to go with her again. The guy had no intention of participating in another battle and decided to find out how far she would go. The girl wanted to buy a house and a yacht in Greece, but she couldn't yet. She needed to hunt for about 5 more years because her dreams were constantly growing. This kind of work was good, but the problem was controlling the money, so Maria thought she should also look for a manager. Kang Jun was also thinking about this, and the girl asked him to let her know if he found someone suitable. The young man assured her that this would not happen because he was bored with it and wanted to learn management. Maria was shocked because having become an S-rank hunter, he decided to switch sides and become a manager. But Kong Jun understood that he was different from the S-rank knights and was made of thin fabric. She could sense this if she tried her hand at management, because it would be easier to make money off someone else's life than her own. His partner didn't understand what he was thinking, but Kang Jun offered her a special price. The guy intended to return to Korea. He hoped to see Maria again someday. She advised him to call if he needed her help. After saying goodbye, he went back to his homeland to dive into the peaceful life he had already forgotten. Maria couldn't be honest with her partner and knew that she couldn't just leave him like that. The heroic manager Sol Young did not know a single one of the lion's share of hunters around the world. Most people could not properly fill out their savings books. That is why the management order came from this department. They took on all the difficult tasks and were able to concentrate on the work of the hunter. They carried out thorough checks and manufactured equipment, as well as modernizing it. They effectively ensured the safety of the ether and farmed it. If hunters wanted to relax abroad, managers could plan everything they wanted and prepare them for retirement. The hunting management company provided such services at a reasonable rate, calculated as a percentage, which Sol Young guaranteed to her client. Life is short, and this company handled the hunter's assignments without pause. So the manager tried to find out what Kang Jun wanted, but he came for a different matter. The guy showed an ad in which the company was looking for a heroic manager, and he wanted to take on this position. The girl was surprised that a former hunter wanted to try his hand at being a manager. Sol Young looked closely at the guy and noticed a device on his hand that hunters wore. Kang Jun asked her to put aside her doubts because he really had come to them to become a manager. The girl immediately decided to find out if he knew how to use a savings book, if he had office software skills, if he knew foreign languages, and if he had the required education. The heroic manager believed that it was easier for people like him to be hunters. Sol Young had no reason to hire him as a manager. Kang Jun was a good deceiver, but the girl did not understand how that would help their company. The job of a manager was a burden for hunters, so the guy thought he could handle it well. Sol Young decided to test him and asked him to lie to her again to confirm his skill. It turned out that Kang Jun had already lied to her. He pulled on his wristwatch, which made a loud click. Such an item was not an attribute of a hunter, and thus he managed to prove that he had deceived Sol Young. The manager did not understand why this man lied about being a hunter when he was not, and she assumed that Kang Jun might be a spy from another company. The girl still couldn't understand this man who continued to enjoy his coffee. Sol Young was deceived without even seeing the hunter's license. Her mistake was jumping to conclusions, but she couldn't be convinced by such a showy display. Until Kang Jun deceived her again, she could not accept him as a manager in this company. The guy decided to see if he would definitely be accepted if he deceived her. Sol Young responded positively, making it clear that it would not be that easy. Suddenly, the young man declared again that he had already deceived her, and the girl again did not understand what he was talking about. Kang Jun took out his sword and confessed that he had been a hunter but had now decided to give it up. Then he showed her the hunter's license she had mentioned. He was sure that now they would definitely hire him because he had outsmarted her as they had agreed. Sol Young hired him as a manager, and he was to start work the next day. The next day came and Kang Jun arrived for his first day of work and began to immerse himself in the company's affairs. The guy tried to find out from the chairman why the company was located in an offshore zone. This caused the girl to become indignant because she considered this firm to be ordinary. Kang Jun found it strange that there were no other employees in the office besides the two of them. The company was not doing very well because they had very few hunters and the head of the finance department was abroad. The guy knew that this situation was called stagnation. Sol Young assured him that they had one more employee who was returning to South Korea. The girl understood that even though there were 3 of them, this number was small for a normal company. So she suggested that Kang Jun take up hunting, but the guy signed a contract stating that he was not obliged to engage in hunting activities. The new employee promised to find new hunters who would use their services. After a while, a warning was announced at Gwanghwamun Station, asking passengers to remain calm and follow safety rules. One of the passengers realized that this had happened because of her actions, and that there were still many hunters who had not yet made their debut. A few more days passed, and Kang Jun realized that they would not be able to find the hunters through announcements. Suddenly, he was stopped by a soldier who informed him that outsiders were not allowed to enter the square at that time. A shell had been found in this location, so the military cordoned off the area to protect civilians. The military acted quickly, and those around were curious to see what kind of hunter would appear this time. Some assumed that a hunter who used fire attacks would appear, but because the core was D rank, B rank hunters might not come to clear it. The pressure from the taser was directed at the core, but there was no particular excitement. Suddenly, the core began to pulsate, emitting loud sounds. Rishin's team of hunters arrived, and they were praised for their good work. The team leader entered the territory and asked the military for support, and they did not object. The military intended to begin strategic operations, so they asked everyone to leave the area, but Kang Jun asked them to stop. Suddenly, the guy tore the tape, trying to enter the area, and told the military that the core was a trap. According to Kang Jun's beliefs, the core was disguised as a D rank, but the military knew nothing about this and asked the man to leave the area. The guy showed his hunter's license and ordered the military to take everyone away so they wouldn't get hurt. Meanwhile, Reshin's team was preparing to clear this core, unaware of any danger. Kang Jun approached them to find out more but only scared one of the hunters. The hunter tried to find out who this guy was, and he introduced himself as a passing manager. The team leader did not understand why the passing manager had approached them. Kang Jun ordered the emergency response agents to be called immediately. The man did not understand why they needed to call an A-rank hunter for a D-rank core, as he thought his team would be enough. Kang Jun assured him that this was actually a B-rank core, which had never been seen in Korea, but he had encountered one abroad. Team leader Raishan noticed the strange look on the guy's face, who assured him that everyone here had lost their minds. The guy was just a manager, so he was asked not to interfere. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of a werewolf. The rank caused horror on the faces of the hunters. Rashina's teammates doubted that they could handle it, but the leader ordered them all to hold their ground, because if the monster broke through, it would be the end for everyone. Kang Jun advised them to call for backup. The commander had no choice but to listen to the manager, and they called for backup. The soldiers were ready to stall for time until reinforcements arrived, so they opened fire on the werewolves. The soldiers took aim and attacked one by one to keep the monsters away from themselves for as long as possible. Kang Jun also joined the battle and managed to skillfully eliminate one of the werewolves with his sword. Rashin's team did not expect such skill from the manager, thinking he was just an office worker. The young man managed to destroy a rank 5 werewolf with a single swing of his sword. Noticing this, the leader assumed that the young man possessed an ethereal sword. The former hunter had no time to look at the others because he was busy clearing the area. The weapons possessed by Rashin's team could not achieve such results. Distracted by the battle, Kang Jun did not notice the werewolf approaching him. The young man managed to come to his aid in time and asked the man to quickly step back. One fierce blow from the former hunter cut the werewolf's body in two. The werewolves dodged and began to retreat after changing their target and jumping in different directions. The hunters had to figure out their trajectory in order to easily block their attacks. Hunting each monster was too difficult for humans, so Kang Jun advised them to focus on blocking the werewolves. The situation was not ideal because they had no precautions against nuclear traps. The werewolves kept appearing in this world while help was delayed, and it was difficult for the hunters to resist the endless monsters. The hunters couldn't hold out for long in this state, but they couldn't retreat either. The soldiers began to panic and tried to get further instructions from the captain as the werewolves continued to arrive. The distribution of heavy weapons was completed, and the soldiers intended to understand what their commander had in mind. After preparing the heavy weapons, the commander ordered everyone to retreat to cover. Team leader Raken was against using heavy weapons because reinforcements were expected to arrive soon. Kang Jun assured them that their team would not be able to hold out, and that they should follow the military's decision. But if such weapons were used, the area could be destroyed, and the hunters would not be able to get the ether. The man assured him that if they retreated, they would lose too much money. He believed that the team could continue fighting the monsters. The guy was surprised that this hunter considered broken roads more important than human lives. Kang Jun stated that if one of the tentacles leaked and caused harm to civilians, Commander Reshin would be held responsible. This caused an ambiguous reaction from the commander, who did not understand why a hunter who had accidentally intervened was leading this operation. After the commander of the hunters decided not to take responsibility, the military struck the core. The former hunter did not understand why the shelling began so quickly since the evacuation was not yet complete. Suddenly, a silhouette appeared in the clouds of smoke, and he assumed that help had arrived. The girl began to recite the spell of the holy sword that would put an end to the monsters with its illuminating light. Everyone around her rejoiced because they knew that Acacia had come to their aid. The girl continued to destroy the monsters, who began to scatter when they saw her. Acacia made it clear that she could handle everything here on her own. Kang Jun saw this sorceress for the first time. The monsters that threatened the peace of the city were to perish at the fierce hands of Acacia. The girl was a magician who brought justice to this world, and she vowed to destroy all creatures. Kang Jun decided to find out if this girl was really an emergency response agent, but it turned out that Acacia was just a sorceress. The werewolves did not quite understand what to expect from this girl, so they stopped running away from her. Acacia used a fire spell and managed to destroy the monsters standing in place. The guy was shocked by the skills of this girl who killed the werewolves in one fell swoop. After destroying the monsters, the girl began to laugh loudly because her justice had caught up with the monsters. Kang Jun was convinced of the power of this sorceress, who continued to destroy the monsters one after another. More werewolves were discovered because the V-rank core was still active and continued to move the monsters. Acacia was only glad about this and ordered the monsters to approach her because she was going to destroy them all. After a while, she managed to carry out her plan and began talking about justice again. The man knew that this girl had returned to this world from Ishti. Jun tried to find out which team Acacia belonged to. The girl did not have a team, but even if she did, humanity did not know about it. Acacia was a sorceress who intended to dispense justice using her power and skills. The hunter decided to clean up the trash herself and continued to destroy monsters. People thought Acacia was strange, but despite the terrible names of her techniques and actions, she was incredibly strong. This girl's attacks were based on telekinesis, which allowed her to fight so skillfully. There were few people who could control their powers like that, so she seemed incredible to everyone. After some time, Acacia managed to close the core, destroying all the werewolves in the area. The disappearance of the core was confirmed, and Reshin's team was able to breathe a sigh of relief after that. Kang Jun was convinced that they had done a good job, but the commander assured him that he hadn't done anything special, as Acacia had done most of the work. The man intended to talk to the manager, who had managed to intervene in time and help them. Commander Rishin did not know where this guy came from, but he was very grateful to him because if it weren't for him, they could have died. They managed to achieve this result together, risking their lives, but managed to finish everything without any casualties among the civilians. However, if they had used heavy weapons, the outcome would not have been much different. Suddenly, Acacia announced that she was leaving this place. Since the monsters had been destroyed and the core had disappeared, there was no reason for her to stay here. Suddenly, thick smoke rose and the girl disappeared into it, assuring them that they would meet again next time. Kang Jun was surprised by the hunter's sudden disappearance, but the man assured him that this was typical of Acacia. The girl appeared from time to time when monsters came and then left without even taking the core. Commander Rishin was pleased because luck was on their side today, and the former hunter was a little surprised by his reaction. The manager in turn thought about the strongest hunter who did not have a team. It became known that there had been an error in the system, so the hunters were late in being informed of the rank of this core. Suddenly, a hunter appeared who was supposed to support them in this battle. The guy heard that a core had appeared in the V rank, but everything else was fine because Ms. Acacia and Kang Jun had helped them. The stranger thanked the guy, assuming he was a hunter, but Kang Jun assured him that he was a manager. Ho Yeon introduced himself and said he was an A-rank knight from Leshin's team of hunters. The military discovered that they were missing 10 V-rank cores, and the hunter advised them to ask Ho Yeon, who had just appeared, about it. A man appeared who was indignant at the hunter's behavior, who had made decisions on their own. Choi Kang approached them, recognized Kang Jun, and decided to find out if he was really the hunter he had heard so much about. The former hunter did not know him, but he made it clear that Kang Jun had worked for their company for some time. Choi Kang made it clear that Leshin was in charge here and that it was not appropriate for Kang Jun to simply interfere in this matter. Kang Jun still didn't understand who this man was because despite his explanations, he couldn't understand. Ho Yeon assured him that it was not right to speak so rudely to a man who had helped them, even in Leshin's territory. The A-rank hunter showed his indignation about this with his whole demeanor. Choi Kang only now noticed Ho Yeon, who had been standing next to them all this time. Ho Yeon assured him that such advice to Kang Jun sounded like an insult. The hunter apologized to Kang Jun because he thought Choi Kang was at fault, but Kang Jun assured him that they shouldn't worry about it. Choi Kang was about to leave their company, but Kang Jun asked the manager to stay. Kang Jun asked the manager's name, and he was surprised that the guy didn't remember him. The former hunter constantly forgot small details and therefore did not remember Choi Kang's name. After apologizing to the hunters, he went home. The men thanked him again for his help and wished him luck. On his way home, the guy thought about the recent situation and remembered that he had heard the name Ho Yeon somewhere. The manager decided that he shouldn't think about the A-rank hunter because he was on a team, but Acacia was without a team, and he could become her manager. Reviewing the video from the battlefield, it seemed to him that she was a good specialist in destroying monsters. When he got home, he began to search carefully for more information about Acacia. Pausing the video on replay, he came to the conclusion that this girl was a pro avatar. As he continued watching the video with Acacia, it began to seem to him that this hunter was like a time bomb. Despite her powerful strength, the girl could cause accidental destruction at any moment. After that, Kang Jun intended to talk about Acacia with Sol Yonga. He wanted to work outside the office. The chairwoman assured him that there was no work outside the office at their company, and she began to think that he just wanted to work less. The manager intended to bring a very famous hunter in Korea to their company. The girl decided that since he was praising this hunter so much, he was going to bring in someone related to another manager, but their company couldn't compete with stronger guys. Kang Jun hastened to assure her that this hunter had no managers and made it clear that he was talking about the magical girl Acacia. Sol Young suggested that he was talking about the hunter girl who appeared in the area and then disappeared without a trace. She heard that Acacia's actions yesterday were very noticeable. The girl knew that none of the companies had been able to get Acacia on their side. It was said that not only were famous managers unable to hire her, but no one in the country could do so. The boss wanted to know how her employee intended to do this. Kang Jun assured her that he had options for attracting Acacia to their company. That is why he asked for permission to work outside the office. After thinking for a moment, Sol Young allowed him to do so. The main thing that distinguished Acacia from other hunters was the time and radius of her activities. The girl almost always appeared and disappeared between 5 and 6 o'clock, except on weekends, and her radius of action was limited to the area around the station. The manager continued to study the available information about Acacia on various information forums and websites. Contrary to her appearance, the girl resembled a little girl with extraordinary abilities. There was a high probability that this hunter worked and lived alone and moved freely around the area after work. The most important thing was that Acacia had such a young avatar that someone was controlling. Kang Jun, thinking about the hunter, began to see her everywhere, but then he noticed that the train was starting to depart. The form was influenced by the user's mind or took the shape of a beloved animal, or the form of an unconscious desire. The former hunter did not particularly like the magical girl. Despite this, Acacia was comparable in strength to the world warriors who inhabited Earth. The characteristics that are not inherent in the current Acacia, and her constantly changing fighting style, hinted to Kang Jun that she did not have a manager in the form of an assistant. Continuing his subway ride, he took out his laptop and began looking at photos of Acacia from various battles. It seemed to the guy that all the talk surrounding Acacia was just a farce. After thinking about the information he had received for a while, he came to the conclusion that the real Acacia was an otaku. The manager understood that this hunter might actually turn out to be a guy. Kang Jun wasn't entirely sure about this, and it could be a prejudice if he believed that only men could become otaku. The guy assumed that Acacia was a simple person who had been influenced by watching the magical girl anime, so it couldn't be said that she had no hobbies. Suddenly, an alarm sounded in the Chungjungno station area, and an E-rank core appeared intensively. The train passed through this area without stopping. The station was a place with quick access to transportation. The avatar could be embodied at a considerable distance. The guy knew that the subway train could cover up to 2 stations during its journey. It was impossible to cover more stations, so Acacia did not need to go to the nearest station. When the girl was in action, her real body existed somewhere in the subway station. Kang Jun had an effective way to lure Acacia out in order to find her real appearance. The guy remembered that a movie theater located within 5 minutes of the subway station was scheduled to premiere an animated film about a magical girl today. The manager also wanted to see this animation and would regret missing it. Meanwhile, one of the girls bought some popcorn and waited for the premiere of the animated film about a magical girl to begin. The girl was working late that day and thought she wouldn't be able to see anyone today. Suddenly, she noticed a guy who was persistently heading towards her, and she was surprised by this. Kang Jun sat silently in front of her, and the stranger did not understand what this guy wanted from her. The girl tried to understand what he expected from her and awkwardly tried to start a conversation. Noticing his intense gaze, she thought that this young man was flirting with her. Pulling herself together, she finally managed to ask him what he wanted from her. Unexpectedly, the guy smiled and said that he had found a magical girl, but she didn't quite understand what he meant. Kang Jun pointed to a small figurine lying on the table and decided that it was one of the most unique privileges. The girl didn't understand who he was and why he was focusing on the animated figure. The guy ignored her questions and said that the comic about the magical girl had become very popular recently. Kang Jun thought that this was because the real magical girl was active now. His conversation partner suggested that he was talking about Acacia, because no one else came to mind. The guy assured her that she was right, and the girl felt a little uneasy and began to worry. The young man was convinced that he had a good feeling this time, and believed that this girl was definitely Acacia. The girl completely fit all the conditions presented and, moreover, resembled Acacia in some way. The manager decided to put a little more pressure on her and started talking about Acacia. The girl felt that for a first meeting, this guy was talking too much about himself. The guy assured her that Acacia's clothes were borrowed, which upset his conversation partner. At the same time as the rental version was released, there were many comments and discussions on the internet. The young man advised her not to worry about it, and he continued to pressure the girl to reveal herself. Kang Jun felt that the magical girl was not being shown enough respect. Suddenly, his conversation partner couldn't take it anymore and said that it was the guy who wasn't being shown enough respect. The girl believed that Acacia's outfit was not plagiarized from the magical girl anime. The stranger took out a pen and a notebook and intended to prove it to the guy sitting opposite her. Unexpectedly, she immediately began to quickly sketch an image on the sheet of paper. A few minutes later, she showed him the sketch and assured him that these images might look similar, but if you looked closely, they were different, and the concept and accessories did not match. The girl thought that Acacia and the magical girl were being compared because of carelessness, and she hated such fans. After listening to her, Kang Jun was convinced of his guesses and decided to apologize for his prejudice. The guy assured her that since she knew so much about Acacia, she could be connected to her or even be her. The girl immediately began to justify herself, saying that she was just a fan. Her interlocutor suggested that they talk a little about Acacia. Suddenly, they were interrupted by an announcement about an emergency situation at Cheono Station. A core had appeared, and in order to prevent further damage, train service had been suspended. The guy suggested that the accident happened because the hunters were late. A dispute arose between the managers about who was responsible for the delay in sending the hunters. Unexpectedly, the girl announced that she had urgent business at the station and hurried to leave. Kang Jun grabbed her by the arm because it was dangerous to be at the station at that moment, and in an emergency situation, it was not possible to walk around the station area. The girl assured him that it was really important to her, but the guy asked her to wait for the hunters because it was very dangerous for civilians and her appearance could interfere with the hunters. The guy made it clear that he guessed she was Acacia, but if that wasn't the case, she should stay here. Unexpectedly, the girl said that most of the townspeople had hidden and that it didn't really matter, but she demonstrated her power, confirming Kang Jun's doubts. The guy was a little surprised, but being sure of it, he understood that this was exactly how it would happen. After that, the girl was going to the scene to destroy the monsters that had appeared. The girl asked not to be disturbed, and the young man assured her that she should not worry about it. The manager showed her his phone, which had a recording of the danger alert. It turned out that no core had appeared near them, and Kang Jun had simply provoked her to show him her true ability. The recording was from an old broadcast, and he asked her to relax because nothing had actually happened. Kang Jun decided to stop all these jokes and move on to the real purpose of their conversation. The young man was convinced that Acacia was much more beautiful in real life. The girl was angry with this guy because she completely stopped understanding what he wanted from her. The guy introduced himself to her, saying that he was a manager and a hunter, and apologized for the recent disturbance. Acacia took his business card, but she still didn't know why he had initiated their meeting. If the manager hadn't done so, she would have continued to hide from him. The girl immediately decided to find out what he wanted from her, assuming that he intended to announce it in the media. The guy assured her that it would take too long to explain and therefore decided to postpone it until later. The young man showed her a movie ticket and suggested they go see the movie first and then return to their conversation. After the movie started, many people rushed to gather so as not to miss the beginning. This got on the girl's nerves and she couldn't concentrate on the premiere at all. By chance, the girl had to watch the movie with this particular person. Kang Jun watched the film while her attention was preoccupied with thoughts about him. The girl became curious about how much this manager knew about her. After a while, the film ended. The guy was interested because he had expected less. The guy was about to leave the theater when the girl suddenly grabbed his sleeve, forcing him to stop. The girl said that there was an epilogue that she wanted to see, so they decided to stay and continue their conversation afterwards. After a while, the screening ended, and the acquaintances went to a cafe to talk. The girl was very happy because she liked the film and the epilogue, which exceeded all her expectations. The heroine of the film moved beautifully thanks to the use of modern technology, which Kang Jun also liked. The guy intended to move on to talking about Acacia, but the girl continued to discuss the movie they had just seen. The girl made it clear that this series about a magical girl was very precious to her because she had watched it throughout her life. Suddenly, she realized that she had gotten too excited about watching the film and decided to find out what the manager wanted to talk to her about. Her conversation partner didn't mind moving on to the real topic of conversation about Acacia. Before starting, he decided to ask the girl's real name. Her name was Gina Chue Gina. The manager wanted to know how long Gina had been using the avatar. The girl still didn't quite understand, so the guy explained that an avatar meant the ability to summon a spirit like Acacia. Gina admitted that she had acquired this ability 2 or 3 years ago. Before that, she was like a spirit and could feel herself floating freely in space. The guy realized that before creating Acacia, Jinha could create spirits. After thinking for a moment, he decided to warn his interlocutor that his words might seem unexpected to her. Kang Jun informed her that if she continued in the same vein, she could die within the next 5 years. Such words were indeed unexpected for her, and at first she did not believe him. After this meeting, they parted ways, but Gina couldn't get Kang Jun's words out of her head. Acacia's abilities were above S level, but in situations like this, that didn't help her. Gina thought that the stronger the hero, the better, but the manager assured her that her strength also had its drawbacks. The current situation reminded him of a car racing without brakes. The guy made it clear that if an accident happened in such a case, it would not seem strange at such a pace. If Jin continued to grow in strength at this rate, her body might not be able to withstand it and collapse. No one ever knew how he would die, but when he told her about it, she began to recall her recent experiences. The girl had indeed been feeling unwell lately, but she didn't pay much attention to it. Suddenly, it was announced that the D-rank core was vibrating at the exit of the Yuljiro station, and all citizens were asked to be careful. Gina noticed that this time the announcement seemed realistic, but after talking to Kang Jun, she didn't rush to get stressed out. A feeling of depression haunted the girl, and now she was hesitant to help clean up the core. Despite promising herself not to overwork, she couldn't just leave it at that. The girl herself did not understand why she had done such a thing. She stopped with everyone else in the safe zone. The hunters arrived quickly, and their delay would have been unusual in such a case. Her partners wanted Acacia to come to them again this time, because then they would be able to cope much faster. Suddenly, the girl heard that these hunters treated Acacia carelessly because she almost always cleared the core alone. Her partner decided that his friend was being too arrogant about the huntress, but he assured him that they could handle it themselves. The guy made it clear that in order to get their reward, it would be better not to wait for Acacia. Hearing this, Chinha decided not to interfere in the hunt. She did not expect them to speak about her that way. Suddenly, the girl bolted from her spot, making the soldier nervous. She kept running, trying to get the thoughts that kept haunting her out of her head. Gina herself knew that no one particularly needed her to appear as Acacia. The girl knew that interfering in a matter that was already being resolved was not a very good idea, but she wanted to help. The young lady was aware that, having the ability, she simply wanted to have fun. Suddenly, she coughed, and traces of blood appeared on her hands, confirming the truth of Kang Jun's words, who was ready to help her. After a while, the phone rang. The guy went to the phone and saw that it was Chinha Chue Chinha calling him. The guy picked up the phone and was the first to ask how she was doing. The girl asked to meet with him in person if it wasn't too much trouble. The young man asked her to give him some time to get ready, and Gina sent him her location for the meeting. Gina called him sooner than he expected, so he assumed that something had happened to her. Kang Jun was sure that now he was approaching the final stage and would be able to bring the first hunter into the company. Gina waited for the manager on the street. Night had fallen, but she still believed he would come. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice offering her a cup of coffee. Even though it was cheap coffee from a can, the girl thanked him for it. Sitting down next to her, he tried to find out what had happened to her. Gina made it clear that the conversation would be about Acacia. The girl realized that her avatar, Acacia, had been unnecessary all this time. The guy tried to find out why she thought so. Gina assured him that even without Acacia, the core could be completely controlled. Kang Jun assured her that everyone liked Acacia, but that was because she didn't demand any rewards. The girl was sure that if she asked for something, she would simply be sent away because she was not an official hunter or anything like that. Gina admitted that she had developed the ability and desire to play at being a rescuer like a little girl. In reality, no one needed her, and she put herself above others, believing that everyone needed her. The girl believed that it would be better for her to give up all this because she had very little time left to live. Acacia was not a hunter, but she was not an uninvited guest either because she was a magical girl of love and justice. The boy's words made the girl stop crying and doubting her usefulness. The magical girl protected people without any reward, and in essence, she was closer to a hero than a hunter. Earlier, during the trap with the core, she came to the aid of the hunters, and thanks to her, they were able to cope. And it would have been strange if there had been human casualties in such a case. The guy made it clear that the girl was helping everyone for free with her actions, and because of these words, Jean felt much better. The girl thought that if she continued to do this, it would turn out worse for her, because she had only about 5 years left to live. Kang Jun intended to help her with this. Gina didn't quite understand how he could help her, but he assured her that he could. Her interlocutor made it clear that she would not die now, and that there was a possibility that she would continue to live after 5 years. The manager asked if she had heard of Ethel. The girl knew that it was extracted from the core. Ethel was the main resource for hunters and one of the most important things in battle. Hunters absorbed it themselves to increase their strength and abilities. The guy compared Ethel to a battery that was necessary for monster hunters. Gina had not yet absorbed it because she did not even know what it was at first. This was the reason why her life could end too quickly. By absorbing the right amount of ether, it was possible to restore one's lifespan. Upon hearing this, the girl immediately became excited because it seemed impossible to her. The girl immediately began to rejoice and shed tears of joy. Kang Jun asked her to calm down. Gina thought that in the end, everything would be fine because he said there was a way to help her. The manager added that he also needed her to advance in his work. The girl misinterpreted his business smile because she had little experience with dating. The guy mentioned the danger that might await them because S-rankers had a very strong influence on human life. It would be a shame if Gina's abilities disappeared in this way. He noticed that she was not listening to him carefully. Based on the current situation, the guy decided to tell her everything directly. Gina was ready to listen to him. The guy offered her to become a hunter for their management company and held out his hand to seal the deal. The manager swore to keep his promises, unlike other large-scale management companies. Kang Jun could swear that there was no one in this country who knew more about the Avatar Master than he did. The guy intended to make every effort to ensure that the girl would not regret signing the contract. Gina agreed to the offer to become a hunter, and the manager assured her that it was a good decision. The girl didn't understand what to do next, so the guy advised her to start by filling out an application to become a hunter. Jin didn't want to announce to everyone that she was Acacia, because then her fans would never leave her alone. The guy assured her that it wasn't necessary to disclose this information because she would be registered as a normal reborn. The manager asked her not to worry because their company would take care of all the hassle. Jean found this guy too strained. The girl thanked him for this. It was the first time she had shared her true story with someone. The guy assured her that in the future she could tell him anything she wanted. Now they were a team and he was her manager. These words caused confusion on the girl's face. Gina was happy with this turn of events and asked Kang Jun to take care of her. After some time, the moment came when the manager brought Gina to demonstrate her skills to Sol Yong-gae. The girl demonstrated her skills to the company's management, and Acacia appeared in the room. Gina was very shy and asked if this would be enough to convince Sol Yong. The manager verified the truth of their words and admitted that it was the first time she had seen Acacia in person. When Sol Yong first saw Gina, she thought she was being deceived. The girl made it clear that she was indeed the famous Acacia, who had many fans. The manager hoped that now they would not have any problems and offered the hunter a contract. Sol Young asked Gina to continue to assist their company in the future. Gina had never heard of a woman being a representative, but she thought it was wonderful. Some time passed, and their company worked late into the night at the office as usual. The boss finished organizing the documents related to Gina. Now they had a hunter who had signed a contract with them, and their management could really get to work, but Kang Jun didn't think so. Sol Young didn't understand what he was talking about, but the guy assured them that they had no way to use Acacia. Gina's life expectancy was greatly reduced due to the excessive use of her avatar's abilities. The guy couldn't allow her to fight anymore, and they couldn't let her continue to fight in the form of Acacia. The boss thought that it was possible to restore the lost life expectancy by drinking ethyl. Kang Jun made it clear that this was precisely the problem, because the amount needed for recovery was large. Sol Young decided to find out exactly how much ethyl the hunter needed to restore her life. The guy said that Jin would need about 50 billion ethyl to recover. Such an amount horrified the boss, but even if they managed to find that much, the girl would not be able to consume such an amount quickly. Being reborn, she had to start with basic training and apply it with a gradual reduction. They had to start not with Acacia, but with a reborn F-rank hunter. Sol Young agreed with his words, realizing that things were not so simple in this world. The guy tried to tell her that it might be a little more complicated than it seemed, but the boss understood that the potential demonstrated by Miss Jin in the form of Acacia was enormous, although it could not be applied at the moment. Kang Jun knew about this, and yet his boss's reaction to this case surprised him a little. Sol Young suggested that they just relax and see what comes of it, because their management's job was to help them reach their full potential. The employee agreed with her and suggested that they all work on it together. The boss decided that this time it was her turn to prepare a surprise. The next day, everyone gathered on the roof of the office, just as Sol Young had wanted. The woman brought a whole bag of equipment that she had obtained for free thanks to her connections. Sol Young persuaded an acquaintance who worked at the Hunwall workshop, which produced equipment for hunters, to give her used items that were indistinguishable from new ones. Management was personal connections, which in turn was management. When the hunters saw the equipment, they decided it was very high quality, and Sol Young continued to brag about her connection. The guy also decided to believe that this equipment was high quality as it was praised. Kang Jun guessed that it was worth about 20 million won, but the price of the equipment was in the hundreds of millions. But Sol Young assured him that she had received it all for free. This surprised the former hunter, as he had never managed to obtain anything like this. The manager asked for permission to test the equipment a little, and Sol Young did not object. The guy took the first laser sword and moved away from the girls to test it. The former hunter began to wield it masterfully, which seemed magnificent to Gina. Suddenly, he heard the sword crack and emit sparks, so he immediately threw it out of his hands. After that, he ordered the girls to lie down on the floor so they wouldn't get hurt by the explosion, and he quickly used a protective barrier. There was a powerful explosion that shook the entire office, just as the former hunter had expected. His partners were unharmed only thanks to the protective barrier that was used in time. The girls were shocked by what was happening. They couldn't understand what caused the explosion. Kang Jun reported that it was a defective product that poorly regulated the release of ethyl, and he believed that other items were also defective. In that case, the guy had to personally check the connections of the company representative in some way. Sol Young did not believe that there could be a defect in Hyunwol's workshop. The former hunter understood everything immediately, as he had encountered similar pranks several times before. His boss doubted that such an explosion could be called a prank, because if it weren't for him, they would have died. Kang Jun thought so too, and therefore asked Sol Young to have no more dealings with Hyunwol's workshop. The guy suggested teaching the mean prankster a lesson and showing what their company was capable of. After some time, Kang Jun personally came to the Hyunwol workshop to explain what had happened. The leader was surprised that they had managed to get their defective products for free. The guy reported that this product had an unusual defect. The workshop director became curious to learn more about it. The manager reported that their equipment had almost led to human casualties. The man laughed when he learned that no one had been hurt, since they had received the goods for free. The young man made it clear that this was not a case that could be dismissed with a laugh. Kang Jun couldn't understand why such defects had appeared in the products of the Hyunwol workshop, which had long been known for producing branded equipment for hunters. The workshop manager did not understand the young man's hints, but according to the former hunter's convictions, such an act was deliberate. The man remained perplexed, assuming that the young man watched too many movies. The workshop leader intended to ask the guest one question to shed light on the situation. The representative asked Kang Jun if he knew who black consumers were. The young man made it clear that he didn't know much about it, but he didn't think it had anything to do with their business. Black consumers filed malicious complaints in order to obtain unfair benefits. Starting a conversation about the product he received for free, he could make up a story about the equipment exploding in order to extort money from the workshop. The senior workshop manager intended to give advice to the manager who had come to him. The man advised him to watch who he attacks because he could have made so much effort to fully satisfy the request for help, but weak management shows arrogance in such matters. The head of the workshop made it clear that he had the power to destroy the company that Kang Jun worked for. It seemed to the man that this guy did not understand at all what influence his workshop had on the hunting industry. Suddenly, the young man took out a sword and deftly cut the cigarette the man was holding in his teeth. The head was about to call the police, thinking that this guy was going to threaten him. Kang Jun simply took out the sword he had received yesterday for a short time. The battery in this weapon could be recharged, and the boy inserted it into the hilt of the sword. After that, the young man suggested that the man play a game of hawks and doves. The manager assured him that if they were black consumers, then, as the workshop manager had said yesterday, the explosion was a hoax and their products had no defects. The head was sure that it was all staged, but the young man assured him that he was not involved in such matters. Kang Jun was not mischievous and did not endanger people's lives with his actions. He asked if the man sensed a catch in his words. The man had nothing to say. He intended to turn off the sword so as not to do anything foolish. The young man did not understand why his interlocutor was panicking, since he said that the explosion was a deception. The young man advised him to stop paying attention to the sword and suggested that they make the negotiations work for both of them. The head of the workshop saw the true nature of this man, but understood that if this thing worked, they would both die. The man knew nothing because their workshop did nothing with its products. The young man knew that this sword was made in the Hyunwol workshop, but the head assured him that he also received this product. Earlier, someone had suddenly given him a large sum of money and asked him to give it to the guys. The man was also told to deliver a large quantity of weapons, and fearing for his life, he agreed to do so. The head of the workshop did not know who that person was because he could not even see his face. The man did not know what kind of deal it was, and the Hyunwol workshop delivered untested products received from an unknown person to the hunters. This seemed suspicious to Kangjun, because they did not think that there could be any problems. The head of the workshop could not resist, and agreed to replace everything with new products without defects. The interlocutor asked the guy to stop behaving obscenely and not to mock him. Now that the workshop manager was in this situation, he doubted that things would get easier for him. Kangjun demanded a guarantee for the weapons he had received. The man had no choice but to agree and give a warranty for his products. The young man continued to pressure him, extracting favorable terms for himself, and the workshop manager made him a promise and extended the warranty period indefinitely. Having achieved the desired promises, the manager turned off the sword, and the head, finding himself safe, began to try to renege on his earlier words. The young man was not going to joke with him and asked if he intended to deceive him. The man swore that he had spoken to him honestly and truthfully, and that if he had lied, he would go to hell. Kangjun was not afraid of the consequences and finally decided to discuss one more topic with him. Taking his smartphone out of his inside pocket, the young man made it clear that he was recording their conversation. The head of the workshop, Hyunwol, realized that he would not be able to simply renege on his words. If these facts were to become public, it would deal a serious blow to the workshop's brand image. After they had decided everything, Kangjun apologized and left the office. The man felt that his life had been cut in half after that conversation. The young man asked to be provided with the products and a copy of the contract next time. The head of the workshop did not understand who this person was, who introduced himself as a manager and assured him that extortion was his talent. After a while, he called the company's chairman and reported on the successful deal. The manager was sure that a solution could always be found because he knew from experience that the sword's vibration function was useful. Kangjun asked if Sol Young ever had any enemies, and she assured him that she shouldn't have any. Despite her answer, the guy felt that someone must be behind what had happened, as the scale of the explosion's consequences was intended solely for destruction. The girl thought that such an incident could easily make her a lot of enemies, and the company's chairman intended to do everything at her discretion. Kangjun did not object to this. After a while, a delivery service arrived at the company's office, bringing them the agreed-upon goods from the Hyunwol workshop. Sol Young was surprised by the large quantity and decided to check whether it was indeed the promised goods. Kangjun suggested that they all check the quality of the product together this time. After spending some time checking, they found that all the products were of high quality and, moreover, were top-grade Category A. Sol Young was very tired from this inspection and had no idea what to do with these goods. The manager asked if she wanted to know how he managed to pull off this deal, but the girl found the story frightening, so she didn't want to listen to him. Now that all the equipment was in perfect condition, all that remained for their company was to find hunters. Sol Young believed that they could start right away, and their management would be able to get going. The company had already managed to recruit a reborn who could provide support from a distance. If they could find a knight who could repel attacks, they would have a simple team of 3 members. Kangjun understood that this would be difficult to do, so Sol Young asked him to help her with it. In that case, the guy believed that it was time to release the graduates of their Knight Temple. His conversation partner knew that most of the graduates were candidates for the Templars. Among the scouts, there was fierce competition among the few candidates for large-scale management hunters, and Sol Young doubted that their company with such management would be able to recruit anyone. The former hunter, on the other hand, did not think it would be difficult, but the chairman did not believe that his idea would work. Kangjun decided that this time he would have to use his personal connections. Meanwhile, many future hunters gathered in the temple's cafe. Company employees were responsible for equipment and tried to recruit graduates. One of the girls asked about bonuses and rewards. The manager understood that Zhu Yan had good achievements and promised to create the most comfortable conditions for her. The girl was very grateful to them for this and asked for time to think it over. Another graduate sat alone at a table because none of the companies had offered her a position. After finishing her conversation with the manager, Zhu Yang decided to ask her friend who she was waiting for. The girl did not answer, but Zhu Yan insisted on an answer to her question. Zhu Yan assured her that her friend had been too busy to meet with her, and now offered to talk to her for the first time in a long time. Her friend had recently grown tired of working with agencies. She felt that there was fierce competition due to the small number of knights. Zhu Yan was sure that her friend would be appointed to a position immediately after graduation, and her friend suggested that she do the same. The girl felt that the Templars strictly observed military discipline and were prohibited from having any relationships. Zhu Yan was not sure she could last long in such a place. Her friend didn't care where she did what she was good at because she had a different personality from Zhu Yan. Even if she lost to Zhu Yan, she could still go where her heart called her. Her friend did not understand why Zhu Yan always mentioned the Templars, because they were in an unenviable position, except for the fact that they had left the ranks of free hunters. Suddenly, her friend announced that she was tired of it all. Zhu Yan was shocked to hear this. Zhu Yan thought she would eventually understand, but her friend continued to behave unconsciously. The girl assumed that the Templars had no reason to meet with the hunters and therefore might never meet her again. Zhu Yan thanked her friend for her diligence, but she couldn't do anything about her prejudices. The girl continued to stare out the window alone, thinking about the past conversation. The graduate felt that if she went down this path, she would be able to meet someone she knew. Meanwhile, Kang Jun and Sol Yeon stood on the roof and met a certain person who had arrived by helicopter. The company president didn't understand what the hell was going on. The manager called his girlfriend, and she arrived faster than he thought. The man in the helicopter told the girl that they had arrived at their destination. The girl assured him that it had been an easy and pleasant flight for her, and that she was just going to jump down. Sol Young was shocked when she saw this, because not many hunters were capable of such a thing. The chairman saw the power this girl possessed and began to worry for his safety. Maria greeted her friend, whom she had not seen for a long time. The girl made it clear that it was not appropriate to call her back from vacation with just a text message. Sol Young only now understood who this girl really was. Before them was indeed Paladin Maria, whom many had heard of. The boss was shocked because Kang Jun had not said that she was his girlfriend, and she could not believe that it was really true. Maria greeted Kang Jun's boss while Sol Young continued to be surprised by what was happening. The experienced hunter had heard a lot about Sol Young and was happy to meet her in person. The boss was a fan of Maria, so she first asked to take a photo together and get her autograph. After that, Sol Young posted on her social media account with Maria. Maria intended to find out why Kang Jun had called her, as his message did not contain any detailed information. The guy asked her to read the messages more carefully because he had explained everything earlier. Kang Jun said that the release date of the Templar Knights was approaching, and it would be good to help the scouts a little. Her friend suggested that he wanted to help someone using her name, and she didn't think it was a very good idea, but Kang Jun had no intention of using his past personal connections. That's why he asked her, a universally recognized and powerful knight, to help him. The girl was a little embarrassed by these words and promised to do everything in her power. Marie just had to deceive a certain person once, which was different from what she had imagined. After that, they gathered their things and set off for the Knight's Temple. The guy was happy that they were able to take the van in the absence of hunters. The girls continued to sit in silence because they did not quite understand what Kang Jun had in mind. Sol Yong felt uncomfortable because she had taken the hunter's seat, but if she had known about it, she would not have sat there. Maria decided to ask her boss how her colleague was doing and whether he was coping well. The girl admitted that things were not going very well. Kang Jun intervened in their conversation, assuring them that his boss had recently said that everything was going well for them. The chairwoman agreed with him, but was worried when she didn't know where her subordinate was or what he was doing. Maria assured her that Kang Jun was a reliable colleague and an ordinary hunter of rank 5 with strong abilities. Sol Yong knew that B rank wasn't that high for a hunter, but her conversation partner assured her otherwise. For ordinary hunters who are neither reborn, knights, nor mutants, the highest rank is B. The criteria for the A rank itself had not been developed for such people, and Sol Young did not understand why this was so. The boss wanted to know how long these two had been friends. Kang Jun admitted that they had been friends since childhood. The comrades kept in touch even when he entered the Hunter Academy and Maria entered the Knight Temple. There were frequent academic exchanges between the two educational institutions. Maria admitted that they both had very low academic performance in their educational institutions. Sol Young was surprised to learn that an S-rank hunter had low grades. Kang Jun did not understand why she did not mention anything about him. In the past, when Maria was in the prime of her youth, she often argued with teachers and fought with them more often than with monsters. This was because of the girl's real name, which she warned everyone not to mention. The boss found out that Maria's name was not real because she dyed her hair, wore contact lenses, and was born in Korea. The girl tried to stop her friend, but he had already revealed her real name, Kim Yul-sung. His friend was outraged that he had spread someone else's shameful secrets without permission. Kang Jun assured her that she was the first to bring up the past. Maria suggested that this time they die together. Sol Young was shocked by what was happening, but was convinced that these two were true friends. After that, they managed to get the real book of records of the Knights Templar, which also included candidates for the Templars. As Kang Jun had said, he was looking for a replacement for himself, which is why he was so happy. The boss was surprised that the Templars were not on the usual list. Kang Jun did not officially announce it, but the list of Templar scouts did not include Templar candidates. They were training hunters, but the Knights Templar was originally an institution that trained Templars. Bondi Knight was an organization that trained Templars, but it was difficult for management to attract such candidates, which is why Kang Jun blocked the information in advance in order to compile 2 books of records. Sol Yong doubted that this was normal, but the manager knew that it was not a good idea to tempt sacred disciples to become Templars. The guy asked if they would mind if he tried to tempt one, even though he was Maria's friend. She still considered his actions terrible. The first place on the list was taken by a student named Kang Ju Young, but she was a candidate for hunters, so Kang Jun excluded her. So Ah-ran was first among the students in the Templar candidates, so she was a good fit for them. Maria found this very interesting, but she did not understand what low-level cooperation meant, because usually the low level was F rank. This meant completing all team assignments independently, without cooperation. Kang Jun decided to ask his friend what she thought of So Ah-ran, whom he intended to recruit. After hearing the details, Marie did not count on the other candidates from the Knight's Temple, Sol Yong, noticing her subordinate's strange look, decided that he had completely lost his mind. His friend assured him that this behavior was very similar to the old Kang Jun. The chairwoman learned that someone like Kang Jun wanted to reject the 2-position increase, and it seemed to her that Maria could persuade him otherwise. The girl assured her that a man like that would never listen to her, and that the desire to become a Templar was irrelevant if it meant destroying monsters. One of those people who were tired of fame and power and ignored other people's words, perceiving the latter as grumbling, was Kang Jun. The guy had a feeling that he had seen So Aran somewhere before. Kang Jun intended to meet her and talk to her anyway, and Sol Yong asked if he had any better ideas on the matter. The guy knew it would be difficult to bring a candidate to the Templars, but he believed that if he met with her, everything would work out. The chairwoman thought that everything would turn out that way, and Maria agreed with her because she knew her friend's nature. Meanwhile, So Aran continued to sit alone, unaware of the upcoming meeting. Kang Jun tried to figure out the best course of action in this case. He had found out her contact and personal information, but he couldn't just go looking for her. It seemed to the guy that these guys didn't care, or the question was whether it was a sense of duty. Suddenly, he noticed an unhappy Ju Yeon walking past him. Kang Ju Young, the knight, took first place in the rankings, and contrary to expectations, the atmosphere around her was as if she were an ordinary student. Kang Jun doubted that he would be able to see her again in the future because this world was so vast. Quite by accident, he noticed So Aran, who was shocked to see a familiar face in front of her. The guy immediately realized that this world was not so big after all because he managed to find the right candidate. The manager approached her and immediately apologized for interrupting her rest. Kang Jun intended to talk to her a little and told her that he knew she was a candidate for the Templars, so Aran did not mind this conversation. The girl became curious about what he wanted to talk to her about and was therefore ready to listen to him. The guy decided not to waste time and got straight to the point, offering her to become a hunter. The student reacted ambiguously to this, deciding that he was offering her to do it. Kang Jun nodded affirmatively, believing that she had a reason to quickly become a hunter, so Aran agreed to do it. The manager did not expect her to agree so quickly. The girl was ready to do as she was asked. Meanwhile, the girl sat under a tree waiting for Kang Jun to return. Noticing a strange look on her face, Sol Young decided that there was something wrong with her face. Maria decided to find out how old this boss was and was surprised by the answer. The hunter repeated that she wanted to know the age of Sol Young, who worked with her companion. The girl was surprised that as soon as Kang Jun disappeared, Maria's expression suddenly changed. Her interlocutor asked her not to lie because she wanted to know how she became a representative of the company at such a young age. Sol Young told her her age, but to Maria it seemed like she was just a child. If she had told her that she was a schoolgirl hunter, Maria would have believed her. It seemed to Maria that the aging process had been reversed. Maria didn't know what was going on, but Sol Young could be in big trouble if she just put up with the discomfort. The hunter offered to recommend a good clinic, but Sol Young declined, thanking her for her concern. The chairwoman wanted to focus on the matter at hand, and they noticed Kang Jun's return. The guy brought them the coffee they had asked for. Sol Young thanked him because her throat was already dry. The manager told the girl that on his way back, he had accidentally met So Aran. The young man assured her that the girl was ready to become a hunter in their company. This statement puzzled Sol Young, but Maria was delighted. Kang Jun made an offer, and So Aran agreed. In any case, she signed the contract for hunters. Sol Young did not understand how he managed to meet her so accidentally and sign the contract. The manager was just walking down the road when he met her, and simply made the offer. He didn't know if So Aran would regret wanting to become a Templar. Maria suggested that the two might have fallen in love at first sight, but the guy dismissed that idea. This came as such a surprise that the chairwoman couldn't figure out what was going on, but the contract was signed according to all the rules. Her friend decided that since everything worked out for him, she could be free of this. Everything turned out to be easier than expected. Maria made it clear that Kang Jun would owe her for this. The hunter intended to leave them because all the business was finished and her comrades did not need her help. Sol Young wanted to treat her to a meal before she left, but Maria declined. Her friend asked the guy to at least walk her out, and he didn't mind. Once they were alone, Maria asked her friend to decide whether he would remain in the alliance, since everyone was in a difficult situation. The guy promised that he would let her know soon, and his friend assured him that it would be better for him to leave than to be expelled. As they said goodbye, her friend assured her that they would be able to see each other again when they had business together. The girl advised Kang Jun to take care of himself as she got into the car and left the knight's temple. After Maria's car drove away, he immediately reported this to the company representative, saying that Gina had already fulfilled all her duties. The girl recalled the incident in the Yekon underpass involving monsters. Earlier in one of the cities of Korea, So Aran happened to be involved in this incident by accident. The incident with the monsters in Jekon occurred in the year 2031. The largest number of human casualties was recorded after the approval of the crisis management instructions. A Class C underground dungeon appeared near an abandoned construction site, and due to malfunctions, the broadband detector was unable to detect the waves. Young So Aran witnessed a terrible catastrophe as monsters devoured people. Within 2 days, the monsters evolved to level A and flooded the entire city. Local residents, noticing the monsters, began to flee in panic, trying to survive. But So Aran was in shock from what was happening and could not move. Her friends didn't understand what she was doing. They tried to take her with them into the bunker, but the girl refused to go with them. So Aran did not want to leave her father and mother, who had stayed at home near where the monsters were rampaging. The monsters continued to destroy everything in their path and spared no one. The area was plunged into utter ruin. So Aran still ended up in the underground bunker of the Jungcheong school. The vice principal forbade the girl from opening the door, arguing that they could all die because of it. The survivors did not know whether the monsters were hiding in the corridor or not, so the vice principal was not going to open the bunker door. The others understood that they could save the survivor if they opened the door right now, but the man was against it. The vice principal understood that he could be condemned for these words, but in order to save everyone else, he forbade them from opening the door. So Aran had no intention of listening to him and began to open the door to the shelter, but the vice principal ordered her to stop. The man was sure that the schoolgirl did not understand what she was doing, but the girl was not going to leave the survivor outside the shelter. The schoolgirl opened the bunker doors, thereby saving the life of another girl. The rescued girl was Ju-hee, and the teachers were glad that she was safe and sound. So Aran was surprised that these teachers had refused to let her in until recently. The head teacher ordered the bunker doors to be closed immediately, as he did not understand what the schoolgirl was planning to do. The girl had no intention of staying with them, so she left their disgusting gathering. Once outside, she still hoped that her parents had survived. Walking through the ruined streets of the city, she became increasingly convinced that there were no survivors left here. So Aran no longer wanted to remain in this mortal world, so she decided to surrender to fate. Suddenly, she heard the sounds of battle and opened her eyes to see Kang Jun, who had come to her aid. The hunter reported the survivor he had found to headquarters, and he was asked to move her to a safe place. The guy could handle this task alone, so he refused reinforcements. The girl did not quite understand what was happening when he suddenly held out his little finger to her. Kang Jun asked her to take his finger as a sign of a promise until they got out of there. The guy assured her that if she could keep this promise, they would get out unharmed. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a monster that jumped off the roof, intending to finish them off. The hunter deftly shot the monster and managed to destroy it before it could harm them. Afterwards, they clasped fingers as a sign of their promise, and so Aran found the motivation to continue living. As they made their way to safety, the two were constantly pursued by ferocious creatures. Using his weapon, the hunter managed to fend off the monster's attacks. The other monsters began to gather at the sound of the shots, but Kang Jun managed to eliminate them all. Thus, he managed to bring the girl to safety without any injuries. The girl looked closely at her savior and wanted to become like him. So Aran tried to find out who he was, but he did not expect to hear such a question. It wasn't easy for the guy to answer this question, but he said he was a monster hunter. Kang Jun explained that people like him are called hunters and asked her not to call him uncle. A lot of time had passed, so Aran thought that her savior didn't recognize her, and she didn't understand why he had become a manager. After thinking about it for a while, she didn't care anymore because she wanted to move forward with him as before. Some time passed, and the day of graduation from the Night Temple arrived. Many managers began to gather at this place to recruit hunters. Lonely, so Aran noticed Kang Jun trying to hide a bouquet behind his back from her. The guy congratulated her on her graduation, and she was embarrassed at first because she didn't know how to react. The manager suggested celebrating this day together because now she could join them as a hunter. The girl was very happy at that moment because she wanted to be close to Kang Jun. Sol Young congratulated her on joining the ranks of the hero management hunters, introduced herself, and hoped for the cooperation of the participants. The boss was happy that they now had 2 hunters, but in order to officially form a team, they needed 1 more hunter. The chairwoman introduced Kang Jun, who would be supporting them. He was a former hunter and asked the new employees to support them as well. The girl had high hopes for the manager, as a lot depended on him. So Aran tried to find out if their company provided housing for hunters. Miss Aran had recently lived in a dormitory, and it was uncomfortable. Sol Young hinted that Kang Jun should take her in, as his house was not far from the company. The boss assured them that the company would be able to provide them with housing and meals, but Kang Jun assured her that he could only help with housing. Sol Young learned that Kang Jun was the owner of an entire building, and she did not understand why he had become a manager in that case. The entire 4th floor of the building was occupied by 1 apartment, which was large enough for 2 people to live in. Kang Jun lived in a 1-room apartment on the 2nd floor, and they could turn to him if necessary. The girl didn't understand why he lived in a 1-room apartment and not in a spacious one, but it turned out that living alone in a spacious house annoyed him. The monthly rent was 1.5 million won. Kang Jun made an exception and did not intend to take a deposit. Sol Young realized that she would have to pay for his apartment, which he had rented out to the hunters. The guy gave the girl the room card and promised to come up to them as soon as he took care of the formalities. Gina was surprised that they only needed to bring 2 people. Kang Jun didn't understand what the problem was. The girl assured him that everything was fine, noticing her partner's embarrassment. Gina was very embarrassed about her misunderstanding and thanked them for their concern. After a while, the girl unpacked all her things in the room. She hadn't expected it to be so tiring. Gina noticed So-A-Ran's intense gaze and didn't know how to act in this situation, so she decided to introduce herself to her future partner first. Meanwhile, So-A-Ran did not understand what kind of hunter Gina was as she looked weak. The girl introduced herself as Gina, an experienced avatar master, but assured her that she still had a lot to learn. So-A-Ran also introduced herself to her. So-A-Ran assured her that it was difficult to find an experienced avatar master these days, and Jin asked her for help. Gina continued to feel ashamed because lately she had been surrounded only by tactless people. Her partner tried to find out how Gina became a hunter, and she was delighted to hear this question, but did not want to reveal that she was Acacia. The girl thought for a moment because she wanted to explain it to her, so as not to raise unnecessary questions. Gina admitted that she was a magical girl named Acacia, which meant that she had avatar abilities. It was said that this ability had a very bad effect on the human body. The girl told So-A-Ran everything that had happened to her recently and how she had met Kang-Joon. Thanks to Kang-Joon's help, she was now in this place and could help him and prolong her life. After saying this, the girl felt awkward because she did not consider herself as outstanding as the knight So-A-Ran, who thought that this was a good enough reason. So-A-Ran learned that Kang-Joon had saved this girl just as he had saved her back then, because even after becoming a manager, he hadn't changed. Gina wanted to know why So-A-Ran had joined them, but the girl kept it a secret. The girl had recently bought a movie about a magical girl and suggested that So-A-Ran watch it with her. Gina suddenly realized that this could be interpreted as her being an otaku, so she tried to explain herself, but So-A-Ran had nothing against other people's hobbies. Her partner admitted that she also had favorite movies, and Gina assured her that this was the best movie. The movie about the magical girl seemed like a children's movie, but it was very well made, and Kang-Joon also found it interesting to watch. Upon hearing this, So-A-Ran immediately attempted to obtain the film from him in order to watch it. The girl made it clear that since the manager had watched it, she had to watch it too. So-A-Ran turned on the film on the TV to find out what Kang-Joon liked about it. The novice hunter watched the movie with interest, which was turned on quite loudly. After a while, she began to doubt that the manager could have watched something like this. Gina did not watch it with her because someone called her. Despite this, she continued to watch the movie, deciding that there might be an unexpected plot twist later on. The main character of the film was no longer like her former self and was ready for anything. After spending more time watching, she realized that it might turn out to be much more interesting than it seemed. So Ran continued to watch the film alone. The magical girl could not win at this pace. The plot made the viewer dive into this fictional world with interest. The girl was already worried about the main character and offered her words of support. So A-Ran was so engrossed in watching that she didn't notice Kang-Joon appear next to her. The girl was startled when she heard his voice, but he apologized, saying he just wanted to point out a few things. So A-Ran tried to explain, but the manager asked her not to worry about it. Kang-Joon put the documents on the table and asked her and Jin to read them. Before leaving, he wished the future hunter a pleasant viewing. A moment later, Jinna came to her and, noticing the documents on the table, assumed that there was some kind of problem with them. So A-Ran remained silent because she felt awkward about the recent event. But Jinna thought that she was deeply impressed by the film, and, contrary to her expectations, her partner turned out to be a sensitive child. After a while, the girls went down to the basement to the training room. The girl tried to practice with baseball balls that flew out of the machine at her. Gina, meanwhile, had a completely different workout. She had to make every effort to bend a spoon. Kang-Joon came down to them and saw that the girls were not succeeding and were angry about it. An hour ago, before the training began, the manager intended to test them. So A-Ran showed the best performance in the Knight's Temple, and Gina proved herself to be very active as Acacia, so Sol Yeon doubted that they needed training at all. Kang-Joon assured them that in a real battle, everything happens differently, and that neither of them had yet reached the level required to participate in a real battle. So A-Ran did not quite understand him, so his manager had to explain his words to the girls. Most of those trained at the Knight's Temple tended to be combative because they had been training to this day. No matter how hard they tried to attack the training dummy, it was programmed not to harm those undergoing combat training. However, in a real battle, the most important thing was not to die immediately upon encountering monsters. The manager remembered his comrades who had died in the very first battle. Therefore, Miss A-Ran had to undergo training at the appropriate level, which consisted of blocking enemy attacks with powerful physical resources. If a knight cannot do this, he is worthless on the battlefield. Jean was eager to find out what kind of training awaited her, since she was not a knight. The girl had enough experience in real battle as Acacia, but it was experience as an experienced avatar master. The company could no longer employ Acacia, and she could not use this avatar. The girl assured them that she was in good shape lately, but the manager forbade her to do so. Kang-Joon assured her that her power was indeed dangerous. Among his acquaintances was an experienced avatar master with outstanding abilities. Therefore, in order to lay the foundations for avatar control, Jin must be sufficiently competent. The master he knew had died in an explosion caused by an avatar. It was a difficult time, so they had to fight monsters. Now Kang-Joon wanted to prevent this from happening again, and Gina also did not want to end her life this way. From that moment on, she would undergo training to become reborn, and she would have to acquire the supernatural abilities of telekinesis. paranormal abilities were lower in rank than the avatar's abilities, so they could not harm Gina in any way. The manager had warned them, so he understood why this situation had arisen. So Aran was completely unable to provide protection, and she understood that she needed to pull herself together. Kangjun approached her and suggested that something was wrong with her. The girl was delighted to see him. She assured him that she was fine and could continue training. She was embarrassed when he grabbed her shoulders. The manager was going to teach her how to calculate the timing of a fight accurately and decided to repeat it with her. So Aren just needed to know the rhythm of the attack and the interval between detection within sight and receiving the blow. To calculate the timing accurately, the guy squeezed her hands tightly and asked her to use the resources of her powerful body. The machine began to quickly feed tennis balls, so Aran was ready for this. The manager squeezed her shoulders and she realized that she needed to use her body's strength right now. It was the first time the girl had felt this way because her previous attempts to do so had been unsuccessful. Kangjun asked her to continue in the same vein, but without him, assuring her that she would get used to it as she went along. So Aaron continued to fend off the tennis balls with the help of her body enhancement. After that, he approached Jin and tried to find out how her training was going. The girl tried to justify herself, but the guy asked her to stop acting like a child. Gina assured him that if she had been successful, she would not have done so. The novice hunter still couldn't bend a spoon with telekinesis and was sure that if she used her avatar, she could do it in seconds. The avatar's ability was to transfer all consciousness into the astral body. A normal reincarnated user used only a very small part of it. It was important to divide the consciousness into small pieces. It was similar to the feeling she had when she thought about something else while working at the company. When the theatrical version was previously released, all of Gina's thoughts while working at the company were about cartoons. The girl assured that it depended on which film would be released in theaters. The offer to make a sequel to the film also distracted her from her work. Being upset, she didn't even notice how she managed to bend the spoon. The girl couldn't understand when she got it and how it happened. Kangjun advised her not to focus too much on any particular goal. Just as when using a spoon while eating, it would be better not to think about it too much. Gina didn't know how she would be able to repeat it, but she promised she would try her best. So Aaron continued to practice, and each time she got better at it. Suddenly, Gina shouted with joy because she had succeeded. The manager did not expect her to be able to repeat it so quickly. Kangjun was convinced that they would have work sooner than he could have imagined. Meanwhile, in the Kyungi Hwasong laboratory, there were just over 20 experimental subjects left, and it would be very bad if the scientists did not get any results within the budget now. Now, if they couldn't achieve the desired result within the budget, it would be even more difficult for them to continue. Entering one of the rooms, they intended to take another body for experiments. This time, the scientists used quite expensive materials, believing that they would be able to achieve success. After a while in the conference room, they discussed the recent explosion at the port of an illegal mutant in Huesun. Kangjun was sure that those who were near the explosion had died. Gina asked them to stop for a moment. The girl tried to find out what the illegal mutant port meant. Sol Young explained that mutants were created in this place. Scientists captured people whose identities were not known and then conducted experiments on them, or created mutants for this purpose from the very beginning. So Aran suggested that in this case, the death of the entire team meant that all the researchers had died because of a mutant that had escaped or exploded. This mutant was created as a result of an inhumane and illegal experiment, and after escaping, it was supposed to destroy the people who had tortured it during its creation. Sol Young reported that the president of the country had issued an emergency order regarding the hunters. The girls were surprised by this news. The order was an open warrant for the capture of this monster. So Aran suggested that now they needed to catch the subject of the experiments. But her boss simply meant to check the place. A large influx of government officials or civil servants was expected at this location, so Sol Young wanted to appear there. The girl was sure that it wasn't a bad idea to go there if they had no other business. Kangjun decided to go there after all, but first they needed to get in shape. The girls found themselves in a storage room for the first time, and were allowed to choose everything they needed. Gina was delighted with the black clothes that resembled the Roman style, but So Aran did not share her taste. The girl knew that the hero's management was a small company, and even renting such high-end equipment could be very expensive. Kangjun assured them that it wasn't rented because it all belonged to them, so he asked them not to worry about it. Such Category A equipment was the company's property, and it was difficult for So Aran to believe this because students like her could rarely afford something like this. Gina tried on the coat and assured her that it would fit perfectly, and Miss Aran told her that it cost 30 million won. Kangjun asked them not to feel shy and allowed them to wear such things every day, as he had bought them especially for them. The girl was shocked by the amount she heard, because in her past life she would never have allowed herself to wear something like this. After a while, they arrived in Gyeonggi province and headed to the operations headquarters. The military carefully checked their documents and allowed them to enter. Although it was an operations headquarters, there was a cafe and a place to rest inside, so Kangjun suggested that the girls have a snack first. His partners agreed to this suggestion. On the way to the cafe, the guy noticed a wanted poster. This was better than their country-suffering civilian casualties. Gina was surprised at how chaotic the operations zone was, but everyone was eager to contribute because it was a presidential decree and a large monetary reward was offered. Suddenly, a man noticed Kang Jun, who was surrounded by high-ranking Templars. The manager hadn't seen Mr. Chu in a long time, who was surprised that he remembered him. So Aran, hiding behind his back, asked if Kang Jun knew this man, whom he had met a long time ago when he was looking for a job. Rumors had already spread throughout the country, but Mr. Chui assured him that it was a narrow field of activity. The man saw that the illegal Templar had outstanding abilities and wanted to know the secret. Kang Jun assured him that it was a company secret that he could not disclose. The manager tried to find out if there was any interesting news, so Aran continued to listen to their conversation from behind. Chui did not want to convey this verbally, so he gave them a document so they could see everything with their own eyes. The partners saw the horrific photos. When the scene was first discovered, they thought the gate had been opened. The mutant was only a word because in reality he was just a monster. Looking through the photos from the scene, Kang Jun noticed some familiar equipment. The manager thought that such a thing couldn't be true, but the photos told a different story. Chu tried to find out what Kang Jun thought about all this, but he had no words to describe the horror he had seen. The manager was disgusted by what he saw, but Choi, on the contrary, laughed at his friend's reaction. The guy hurried to find out where the toilet was because what he had seen had upset his stomach. It was surprising for a man to hear this, so he directed him to the restroom. Kang Jun immediately ran to the indicated place, and the girls were surprised by his quick reaction. Suddenly, they also felt sick and followed him. They apologized to Chui for this. Kang Jun was unable to reach Maria by phone, so he left her a voicemail message. The manager told her about the incident with the mutants in Huisin and suggested that it was a counterattack by the rebels called Shark. Judging by the photos from the laboratory, the rebels' goals remained the same. The guy thought that, unlike the previous one, this time the experiment was quite successful. The girl, returning from the restroom, accidentally overheard their manager's conversation. Kang Jun took into account the scale of the situation and believed that these little ones had finished it off. The guy also assumed that the escaped monsters could be roaming the streets of the city. The blue heart could also become a finished product in such a case, but the girls did not quite understand what was being discussed. The creature named Blue Heart was the most powerful monster of natural disasters, and humanity wanted to reunite with such a powerful being. Maria understood that the disciples usually knew nothing about how to completely devote themselves to the fulfillment of their desires. Kang Jun intended to find the Blue Heart. The manager intended to inform the Alliance of this fact and apologized to his friend for abusing her with requests. After he finished the conversation, the girls approached him and brought him coffee. The guy assumed that they had heard his conversation, but the girls tried to assure him that they had deliberately stayed away so as not to eavesdrop. Chin understood that this was not very good because everyone else looked busy, while they were just loafing around. Approval or rejection was only possible with personal presence in this matter. Kang Jun suggested that they go together to look for the Blue Heart. The girls did not expect this. The guy knew how to find this creature, which could cause a lot of trouble for civilians. The manager wanted to get approval, but even without it, he was ready to get started. Meanwhile, at the observation station, the military lost track of the mutant, who had escaped into the city. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Jun-hyun was furious because he didn't have the equipment to detect the mutant, but his superiors were unaware of the situation on the ground. The wavelength detector was still malfunctioning, making it impossible for the military to find the escaped monster. Kim Jun-hyun did not want to take responsibility for this when someone suddenly entered the room. Kang Jun apologized and wanted to enter the observation post, but the lieutenant colonel did not know who he was. The lieutenant colonel did not understand how a civilian had managed to enter this territory. Kim Jun-hyun ordered them to leave the area quickly because it was a restricted zone for civilians. The manager continued to ignore the lieutenant colonel's orders and sat down next to the employee to find the mutant. The guy asked if they really wanted them to leave because he had a way to solve their problems. The lieutenant colonel was surprised by this, but the manager assured him that he was worried because he couldn't find the escaped mutant. Using the equipment available at that location at that time, it was impossible. Kim Jun-hyun decided that this guy had been sent to them from above. The man threatened him if he intended to deceive him. Kang Jun knew that he meant responsibility. The guy was also part of the company, so he asked the lieutenant colonel not to worry about it because the company was ready to accept the military's conditions. The manager felt that this was part of their company's responsibilities, and the girls were shocked by his behavior. The lieutenant colonel allowed him to continue. Kang Jun asked to turn on the energy reader first. The employees were surprised by this because they knew that this program had too many variables and therefore thought it was better to use wavelength detectors. This did not happen often and they could not do anything without instructions. Despite this, they activated the energy reader and a multitude of variable points appeared on the screen. The lieutenant colonel did not understand what to do with this, but Kang Jun intended to gradually clear all the variables. First of all, they had to remove all the points indicating the locations of power stations and core reservoirs. Then they removed the values emitted by the ethyl and long waves of the core, and finally removed all energy values below rank S. After performing all these manipulations, a point indicating the mutant appeared on the screen, and the lieutenant colonel was shocked by this. The man did not understand how this person managed to know about such a thing. This mutant was a type V and was called the Blue Heart. into whose body an S-rank core had been implanted. The wavelength itself was not much different from that of a monster or hunter, and from this, the truth about the equipment and wavelengths of the lower rank standard was revealed. Jun managed to achieve his initial goal and therefore suggested that everyone prepare for departure. He also asked them to keep him informed of the mutants' whereabouts. The manager and the girls were thinking of leaving the observation point, but the lieutenant colonel asked them to stay. The man had not yet heard of them, so he wanted to know who they were. The guy explained that they were employees of a small company called Hero Management. Night had fallen, so the manager advised the girls to be careful on their way. Suddenly, So-A took out her weapon to protect herself. Gina was shocked, thinking that she intended to destroy the mutant. The girl did not share this view because although their opponent was a mutant, he was still human. But So-A did not consider such a creature to be human, because he had already sent several people to their deaths. Jun agreed with Gina because the mutant was also a victim, but he did not mind if they had to kill him in self-defense. However, he also wanted to talk to the mutant first. The girls did not fully understand the situation, but they understood that they should not rush into action. The manager made it clear that if they felt their lives were in danger, they should do everything possible to survive. It was only possible to take the enemy into account in cases where it was possible to destroy them. The partners intended to find the mutant before the military report was ready. It was enough for them that the government and hunters heard the truth. Shinza did not want to go searching alone. They did not suspect that they were already being followed. The guy, being an escaped mutant, heard their entire conversation and therefore continued to follow them. The team wandered into an abandoned building, thinking that the mutant might be hiding there. Jun sensed someone, but when he turned around, he saw nothing because the guy was hiding behind a column. The manager realized that this mutant was a child in a critical situation. The leader signaled to his teammates, and at first they didn't understand what was going on. The boy told the girls that they were being watched, and Gina was frightened by the news. Jun knew that the mutant was in the area and had no intention of attacking them. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise that they had not made before, and Gina became even more worried. After that, the supposed child appeared, who turned out to be too fast. Gina was asked to stop him, but the girl was confused and didn't know what to do. The girl only had time to use her technique to create a protective barrier. The boy collided with this barrier, which caused him to fly back. He couldn't have foreseen this, so he ended up in wooden boxes that softened his fall. Jun made it clear that her defense was excessive, which meant that the training still hadn't produced the desired result. The manager had only recently said that there was no need to let Jin go, and she realized that this boy was the mutant. The boy called them liars because he heard them say they would not attack him. Jun thought that Gina's actions were minimal defensive actions, and that if they beat him up, it wouldn't end there. The people had no intention of attacking him first, although they did not know if he was going to attack them again just like before. The boy did not believe them because he thought that all adults were liars, and therefore he did not want to trust anyone anymore. Angered, he began to quickly attack his teammates, who really did not want to harm him. Jun ordered So-A to protect Miss Jin while he distracted the enemy. The manager drew his sword and managed to block the boy's attack in time. This turned out to be much more difficult than expected, as he had slightly underestimated the blue heart. The boy continued to attack the guy, who deftly dodged him. So-A watched their battle and wanted to join in, but the manager did not instruct her to do so. The boy's movements were fierce and intense, and he managed to grab the manager. It was difficult to call it a battle, as the boy was just randomly striking with his hands and feet. The boy was just scared, and the whole situation was that he was surrounded by demons. The scientist had been causing him such hellish pain for so long that the boy barely managed to get away, and when Jun ran to find him, they looked just like the people who were hurting him. The boy was not going to trust adults anymore. He intended to destroy them. The boy understood that this was very risky, but he had no other choice. Jun continued to stand in place, waiting to be hit to prove to the child that they were not his enemies. Noticing the traces of blood that had appeared, the girls were in shock because they had not expected this. The manager assured them that it was a close call, but despite his injuries, he survived. If he had pushed him back a little more, all of Jun's ribs would have disappeared, and if he had stepped back a little, all his ribs and bones would have flown out. The boy confirmed his words that he would not attack him, and the boy was surprised by this. The manager promised the boy that everything would be fine. The blow grazed Jun's side, and he asked the boy not to be afraid of them anymore. The boy felt ashamed of his actions and hugged the guy, starting to cry. After So-A bandaged the wounded body, she asked the manager not to do that again. It turned out to be more than he thought, and he realized that he shouldn't have interfered. Gina advised him not to waste his breath with empty words. Jun turned around and saw that the boy regretted his actions and was in no hurry to leave them. Through his actions, the manager managed to win the child's trust. The guy tried to find out if the boy remembered anything about his past. The child remembered that he was called G1, but he knew nothing else. Gina noticed that her partner was still alert in this situation. The manager named him G1 and decided to become his guardian. He asked the other people who were about to arrive to do the same. Jun advised him to say that he didn't remember anything that the others shouldn't know. The guy also promised to come back for him, so G1 didn't need to be afraid. The boy was delighted with the advice he received and assured them that he would do as he was told. After a while, the boy was caught by the military, who assured him that they would take the mutant to the laboratory. The manager asked them not to harm the child as the mutant was currently under the protection of the hero management company. The soldier promised to report this information to his superiors, after which they left the area. So, A-Ran assumed that their work was done, but the manager assured her otherwise. The guy made it clear to his partners that this was only the beginning, but the girl did not understand what that meant. Suddenly, another military unit approached them, having heard that the manager had been very helpful in tracking down the mutant this time. The team was immediately surrounded by the military, and the girls began to panic because of this. Now, according to the military, Kang Jun claimed to be the mutant's protector. The manager decided to find out why they were there, but they just wanted to talk to him. Military detectives were the supervisory authority for the activities of hunters, and therefore Kang Jun was summoned for questioning. The manager didn't know much about this department, but had never encountered it before. The man decided that in this case, their conversation would go faster thanks to him, as they had caught the mutant. But the military had discredited themselves. The mutant caught by Kang Jun was captured far from the operational zone of hostilities, the events of which were published in the press. Now was the right time, when the media was talking loudly about the incompetence of the military. The company's management of heroes was not very good, but because of this event, they could become very famous. The guy wasn't very interested in military affairs, but the general wanted to know how this person managed to find the mutant. Kang Jun suggested that he find out for himself at the Suwon observation station. The man had heard about this, but he wanted to know how the manager realized that this was a target above S rank. Kang Jun could no longer use the method he had been using unless he was sure that the target was above S rank. That is why the military wanted to know how this guy knew about it. The manager realized that the military suspected he was somehow involved in this case. It was a reasonable suspicion, and there was a strong smell, but the hounds were deeply mistaken in thinking that they could let this all pass. The guy knew that this was the hounds' method of taking credit for themselves for a good reason. Kang Jun thought that in this case it would be better to call them hyenas rather than hounds. This infuriated the general, and he threatened that he could destroy the hero management company for this. The guy was surprised that these people failed to pick up on another scent, because they didn't understand that it was an illegal mutant port. The manager asked the general if he had ever seen such a clean, systematic, illegal mutant port. There used to be a conglomerate with its own vigorous activity for illegal mutant ports. He was talking about the Gauss distribution law. In that event, all the company's officials were destroyed. It was a promising conglomerate of companies, and the general suspected that Kang Jun could have done it. The manager did not know the details of the incident, but gradually began to guess. It was clear to the young man that a novice should not interfere in such matters. The general stated that if he was a citizen of the Republic of Korea, he was obliged to comply with their request. The military was asking too much of him. Kang Jun admitted to them that he was not a citizen of Korea. The former hunter showed him his document, and he did not expect to see such a thing. Kang Jun had no citizenship, and his status was guaranteed by the UN. According to the principles of justice, if they wanted to continue, Kang Jun could perceive this as hostility towards the UN. The guy advised them to wait quietly near their master like hounds. Leaving the interrogation room, the manager thought it was a great idea for the military. The girls, noticing the gentleman leaving, were glad that he had been released. Gina immediately tried to find out if he had been tortured. Kang Jun assured her that he was fine and that nothing like that had happened. The manager couldn't believe that his UN-marked license had an effect on people when they heard about this organization. After that, they intended to rescue Jiwon, who had already been subjected to experiments again. The scientists made false promises to release the boy home after a superficial examination. The child understood that these words were a deception and tried to get out of the situation, but all his efforts were in vain. The boy understood that they knew he had no home and nothing else, but they continued to lie to him. Jiwon's eyes immediately flashed with anger. He wanted to kill these people as soon as possible. The man preparing the equipment for the experiment ordered the mutant to calm down. The scientists tried to assure the child that this time it would not hurt, but he was not going to believe them. Suddenly, someone entered the room and ordered them to stop immediately. Upon entering the office, Kang Jun saw that nothing had changed in the laboratory, and that they intended to continue experimenting on the child. The scientists did not understand who this man was, as outsiders were not allowed to enter. The manager assured them that there was nothing to worry about, as he was involved in the case, and immediately began to release Jiwon. The man did not understand what nonsense was going on here and asked the general to immediately remove this insolent person from his laboratory. The military could not do this because it was not within their authority. Kang Jun confirmed his promise to return for the child, but the man had no doubt about that. It was a close call, but he managed to do it. Now the child was completely calm because he thought that Kang Jun would not let anyone hurt him. Suddenly, the mutant remembered his past, in which experiments were performed on him and answers were beaten out of him. Despite numerous injuries, he continued to scream and fight for his life, but the scientists had others to replace him. The scientists did not care about the condition of the test subject because they were concerned about the inventory. Now, Kang Jun had completely freed him from his restraints. Ji-won was convinced that this guy was not like everyone else because all the people he had seen before that day were the same. The manager assured him that he was not old enough to be called uncle. After that, they left the laboratory. Ji-won said that they only asked him questions and did not have time to hurt him. The child thought that the scientists were very frightened. Kang Jun was sure that the mutant who appeared in the doctor's office was a rare case. The boy admitted that he remembered everything and knew that she was not human. G1 thought that in that case he was a monster that humanity feared. The manager assured him that real monsters couldn't think that way. The mutant did not understand why this guy was helping him, assuming that he simply felt sorry for him. The guy understood that it was very difficult at a young age, but it wasn't sympathy that drove him to help because now the company needed his help. The boy was surprised to learn that someone needed his help because people also had their own problems in business. The manager hoped that G1 would earn enough to support himself by helping out as much as he could. Such words caused misunderstanding because no one had ever needed his help before. The girls overheard the conversation between the two and realized that this event was actually the manager's idea. Gina liked how Kang Jun looked, and she thought that everything had turned out well. So Aran assured her that it had been agreed earlier that the man would only show his face. The girls doubted whether the two would be able to get to the office without any unnecessary adventures. A huge crowd gathered on the street to see Kang Jun, and there were also many interviewers. Sol Young didn't understand what these three had done because the company started receiving a lot of calls. It was said that journalists had suddenly descended on their company's office, but Kang Jun did not answer any of the calls from his boss, who wanted to find out what was going on. The boss almost fainted when she heard that her team had fallen into the clutches of the press. Sol Young intended to find out what had really happened. She noticed a child hiding behind the manager's back and thought that this boy could not be a mutant. The woman looked closely at the boy, who was still watching her suspiciously. Ji-won tried to say something to her, but the boss hugged the child without saying a word. This puzzled him because no one had ever treated him that way before. Sol Young felt sorry for this child who had been subjected to such horrific experiments for so long. The boss wanted to know the boy's name, and Kang Jun introduced him as Ji-won. The boy had nowhere to go, so the manager offered to take him into the company and raise him. The woman asked not to refer to the child as a pet. Ji-won remained unaware of what was happening, but he trusted these people. Sol Young made it clear to the boy that he had come to the company at just the right time. The boy thanked them for their warm welcome and asked them to take care of him. After a while, So-Aran and the others began training in monster extermination. The team found themselves in a desert simulation, and the difficulty level of this training was rated S. So-Aran suspected that they might be delayed in this place longer than expected, so she asked everyone to remain vigilant. Sheen was afraid to call what was happening a hologram because everything was too realistic. The girls were in a modern combat station, and if they lost their vigilance, they could get hurt. Suddenly, a huge boulder fell on them, but So-Aran managed to stop it in time. The young hunter didn't understand where it had come from because if it weren't for her reaction, they could have been hurt. Her partner noticed that Chinha had also managed to stop the boulder with her technique. A loud cry was heard and a boss-level daytime demon appeared, intending to fight the girls. Gina was frightened at the mere sight of this monster, and so Aran asked her partners to move to a safe distance. Ji-won disobeyed his partner's advice and went to attack the boss of this simulation. The monster tried to strike the child but did not notice that he was already on its shoulder. The monster tried to throw the person off, but all his efforts were in vain. So Aran realized that Ji-won was in serious danger. The girl knew she had to distract the monster somehow. Kang Jun watched what was happening. After a while, the partners managed to get the child off the monster's body unharmed. Gina doubted that they would be able to defeat this boss this way. Meanwhile, the monster had no intention of retreating and ran towards So-Aran at lightning speed. Her partner advised her not to take such a risk and to retreat, but the girl had no intention of giving up. So Aran couldn't accept that the monster was still standing after the damage it had taken. The boss swung his club powerfully, emitting dark energy. Chinja, noticing what was happening, began to worry about her partner, who intended to continue the fight. The monster delivered a powerful blow that caused the girls to fail this training session. The viability of all team members reached 0, and their training was over. The system began to shut down and the location where they were began to disappear. Ji-won was frightened when he was hurt by Gina's blow. He didn't like this kind of training because it was too realistic. So Aran apologized to Kang Jun for not living up to his expectations. The manager assured them that they had done well for their first time, as they had passed the test only because they had not suffered any serious injuries. The guy understood that otherwise there was no point in this simulation, so he suggested holding a meeting to discuss their actions. So Aran did well, but she made a big mistake which she herself did not understand. The girl's actions were too wrong, and she decided that it only concerned the demon's attack. The girl tried to find out what exactly she had done wrong, and Kang Jun explained that knights should behave differently. The role of a knight was to repel the monster's attacks by standing at the forefront and drawing the enemy's attention to themselves. If they avoided all this, they would not be able to bind the monster and, as a result, defeat it. The manager assured her that Miss Jin had tried very hard this time, but she felt quite differently. The girl shouldn't have taken on too much because it was enough that she took care of Acacia, who could have participated in the training. This was normal, so Jin needed to take it easier and continue in the same vein. After that, Kang Jun ordered Ji-won not to do anything that could get him killed. The boy from the team dealt the most damage to the boss, but it was useless. Ji-won was the only one who did more damage, but he was also the first to die. He wanted to help the team, but that was not what they should have achieved. The team should have strived for survival rather than victory, and the boy realized his mistake. The manager pointed out the mistake, ended the meeting, and suggested they try again. The team was shocked by this because they had not yet fully recovered from the last time. Kang Jun suggested that they do it until they had perfected every detail. After some time, they found themselves in the simulation again and faced the boss. This time, So-Aran intended to make this battle the last one, so she ordered the monster to walk around. The monster began to attack the team, which was determined to defeat it this time. The boss was surprised that the girl managed to stop his attack with her block. As the manager had said, this creature was not as strong as they had thought, so Aran gave Ji-won the command to attack, and he happily headed towards the monster. With such quick movements, he managed to get behind the distracted creature. The boss noticed in time that the young man had climbed onto his back and therefore intended to finish him off first. The girl hurried to warn her companion to be careful. A powerful aura began to resist Ji-won, who was unable to cope with it. Gina asked him to leave it to her because, as a mage, she could neutralize it. The girl managed to stop the monster's weapon with telekinesis and asked Ji-won to simply beat it. The boy understood the plan and began to attack the monster with all his might. With his gifts, he managed to break the boss's horn, so Aran realized that now was the best moment to continue the attack. Putting all her strength into it, the girl was ready to deliver the final blow. Suddenly, Ji-won grabbed the monster by the hair, so Aran didn't understand what he wanted to do. The boy began to use the breath of the blue heart to destroy the enemy. The girls, seeing these abilities for the first time, froze in place as they had not expected anything like this. Ji-won managed to destroy the boss of this simulation with his attack. After that, hope appeared in Gina's eyes, but So-Aran thought it was simply impossible. The system informed users of the successful suppression of the daytime demon in the S-rank desert simulation. The team began to rejoice in their victory, and it became clear to them that Ji-won could shoot a beam from his mouth. The boy thought that they could do it too because, in his opinion, it was very easy, but the girls didn't know how to do it. The manager praised them for their excellent work, because this time they had done a good job with the task at hand. Ji-won kept repeating that they had won and that he had managed to shoot the monster. His teammates did so well that he wanted to celebrate this victory. With their actions, the novice hunters attracted too much unnecessary attention. People realized that this was the team that had been formed a week ago and had recently been featured on the news. Gina realized that they had accidentally become more famous than they had thought. Ji-won was delighted to see so many people. The girl watched them from around the corner. It seemed to her that an A-rank should not be in this team. The hunter heard that So-Aran had refused to join the Templars. The manager informed Ho-yeon that her time was up. She knew that without achieving the required ratio, her results would be deducted from her base salary. The girl asked the manager to stop pressuring her with such instructions, so Aran noticed her acquaintance and did not understand what she could have forgotten in this place. After some time, the team continued to grow rapidly, and at this rate, it would not be difficult for them to enter into real combat soon. The question was whether the area of responsibility was appropriate, because the incident could happen at the right time, and the company's task was to find the right time for it. The manager decided to find out what area of responsibility had been assigned to their district. Sol-young did not understand why he was suddenly interested in this, but he assured her that there was nothing special about it. Most of it fell within the Alpha-Sod area of responsibility, with the exception of small parts of eastern and northern Seoul. The boss immediately realized that the guy wanted to deceive her, but this time she was not going to let him do it. Kang Jun simply thought that Sol-yeon had been eating too much lately. The manager wanted to get involved in this case so that their company would be in the news again. Gina noticed that they had been coming to Kwanok-gu often after training lately. The guy advised the team to consider it a simple drive, so Aran liked to drive around the city. Training was important to them, but rest was no less important. Suddenly an alarm sounded. A core had been discovered, and the situation on the streets of the city changed dramatically. The girls tensed up because of this. Emergency services were expected to arrive shortly. Local residents were asked to evacuate immediately because the core's gates were opening faster than expected. Shinza was convinced that the manager had said that something like this would happen, and that is what actually happened. People who had hunting licenses were asked to immediately gather in the designated area at the intersection at the entrance to the Henda market. Kang Jun was pleased that his plan had finally come to fruition, and he was ready to take control of those gates. Once they were in the right place, Gina doubted that they would be able to advance so easily, but the manager assured her that since the training had been successful, they could engage in real combat. The team couldn't spend all their time in simulations because real combat was much more important. Noticing the appearance of the core, the people around them rushed to leave the area in panic. Suddenly, monsters passed through the gate and descended to the ground, destroying everything in their path. Single monsters of the V rank, nicknamed Needle Bears, flooded the city area. The monster noticed that one of the people was not afraid, but took out his smartphone and began to film it. The guy, seeing the monster's gaze on him, realized that he was in trouble. The team did not understand why a civilian was in this place. The manager ordered So-Aran to block the monster that was about to attack the man. The girl arrived in time and managed to shield the man from the car flying towards him. Using her abilities, she easily stopped the damaged car, saving the man's life. Kang Jun advised to simply block the monster because it was alone. Ji-won intended to strike the monster first, but the needle-bearing bear noticed the hunters approaching. The boy managed to land precise blows to the monster's legs, forcing it to retreat. Ji-won's attack slowed the monster down and gave the others a chance to attack. So Aran noticed that the monster was about to attack them. Suddenly, Gina stepped forward and was about to stop the enemy, advising her teammates to step back. The monster delivered a powerful blow to the hunters and was sure that no one could survive it. After the dust settled, the monster realized that these people had managed to remain unharmed. Taking advantage of the element of surprise, So Aran attempted to attack the monster. There were gaps after using a powerful technique, and if she didn't act now, she would not be able to deliver such a powerful blow again. The girl used the training sword of the Knights Templar, remembering her first training in basic skills for attack or defense. With her sword, she managed to behead the monster, and its lifeless body fell to the ground with a loud thud. Kang Jun didn't understand what had happened at first, but then he realized that So Aran had done something amazing. The girl was very happy to hear praise from the manager and her teammates. A little later, Leishan S arrived at the scene, unaware of the destroyed monster. The girl noticed the situation and reported it to her superiors. A-rank Knight Leishan, Du Ho-yeon was shocked that the mission had already been completed. Ji-won saw for the first time how the monster's essence was being extracted. They just had to wait a little while for the flask to fill up. The military arrived at the scene quickly. Kang Jun informed the hunter that he and his team were not far from the location, and were therefore able to handle the situation before they arrived. The manager thought he had just taken Do Ho-yeon's job away, but the hunter assured him that, on the contrary, they had helped her out a lot. This was much better because if the hunters had been late, there could have been casualties. Do Ho-yeon allowed them to take 90% of the extracted core with them. The guy was very grateful to her for this and asked how she felt about the emergency team's actions. The hunter admitted that this worried her greatly as she had only slept for 2 hours the previous night. The zone was expanding, but the hunters didn't have enough people, and the hunting team still didn't have certain powers. Because of this, the burden on Do Hyun-young's team was too great. Suddenly, she realized that she had accidentally told Kang Jun something she shouldn't have. She asked him to pretend he hadn't heard her words because it was an internal matter. Kang Jun assured her that she didn't need to worry about it, and suggested that she make a deal with him. Do Ho-yeon became curious about his proposal, and the manager asked them to assign them to work in a task force. The manager formed a team, but they still did not have an area to cover. The hunter saw the team's abilities with her own eyes today. This would be good for Do Hyun-young's team, but she didn't know what her superiors thought, and it would be ineffective if high-ranking employees were influenced by such a case. After thinking about it for a while, the girl agreed to talk to her superiors about this because she also wanted to sleep at night. China, noticing how the manager communicated with the hunter Leishan, decided that he wanted to start a romance, but So Aran was sure that he was talking to her about work. The girls noticed that the two exchanged phone numbers, which did not seem like work-related business to them. Suddenly, Ji-won ran up to them and said that the soldiers were handing out snacks to everyone who wanted them. After a while, the boss reacted too strongly to the news she heard. At first, the manager didn't understand what had happened, thinking that cockroaches had invaded their office. Sol Young asked him to take a closer look at the faxes, and the team didn't quite understand what to expect. Kang Jun was convinced that this was confirmation of what he had discussed with the hunter Leishan. Leishan's organization delegated authority to take measures in D and F level emergencies to the Hero Management Company, which possessed energy crystals that appeared in emergency situations. The conditions were better than expected, so the Kwanaku area practically belonged to the Hero Management Company. The team was not authorized to exceed their authority for sea-level emergencies, but on the other hand, this meant that they could only carry out safe missions. Such conditions were ideal. Sol Young thought it was just a joke, but there was a tag against counterfeiting, and the boss was delighted with this. The woman couldn't help but rejoice that the Kwanak-gu zone had become theirs. She had waited a very long time for this day to come. Sol Young felt like it was only yesterday that their company had no hunters, but now they had a designated area of responsibility. Now everything was perfect. Their hero management was coming out into the world from the Kwanak-gu area. Gina was surprised that jurisdiction was so important in this matter. It was said that a team of hunters without jurisdiction was poorer than a volunteer service club. The girl was convinced that Kang Jun was not having an affair at that time, and so Aran was convinced of her words. The boss suggested that everyone go with her to celebrate the event and eat meat. She intended to show them the power of the corporate card. The employees were delighted with their boss's generosity, but Kang Jun thought it was a noisy event. The manager noticed that Sol Young was very kind to Ji-won, who had joined them not long ago. The next day, the manager came to the office as usual, where someone was already waiting for him at the entrance. Sol Young asked Kang Jun if he had any nice clothes, but he didn't understand why she was asking. The guy thought that the clothes he was wearing were good because the suit was quite expensive. The boss said that this time there was an event organized by the Management Association. In name only, the event was actually just a party that would be attended by many well-known managers. The management company of the heroes had received a lot of attention lately, so Sol Young was obliged to attend this event in order to prevent random empty phrases. And it would be better if Kang Jun joined her. The guy didn't want to attend such events, but his boss insisted on the opposite. Sol Young also didn't like such meetings, but she was already used to the battles of society members. Upon hearing this, the manager became even more concerned about it. Kang Jun was not used to this situation, but he had no choice but to accept her offer. The boss made it clear that the event would take place tomorrow. The guy had to go buy expensive clothes anyway, and Sol Young intended to pick out the right outfit for him. After a while, So Aran came out of the shower and heard her smartphone ring. Seeing her manager's number, she began to think that they had some kind of problem. It turned out that the team could take a day off today. Gina was delighted to receive the same message. Her partner was very happy because they had their first day off in a long time. Suddenly, they realized that they had received messages from their manager and director at the same time, so they began to suspect that the two were going on a date. Meanwhile, in one of the shopping centers, Kang Jun was waiting for Sol Young to try on her outfit. The girl found a suit that she thought would suit Kang Jun, but the price of this item was 2 zeros higher than the suit he was wearing now. His boss was surprised that he wore such cheap clothes, but he believed that the price justified itself. The guy thought it was unreasonable to spend so much money on clothes, but Sol Young assured him that this suit was half the price of A-rank armor for hunters. Kang Jun believed that such things should not be compared because lives depended on combat equipment. The girl asked him not to worry about the money because she was already going to buy him this suit as a bonus for his last assignment. The manager thought it was not right to use corporate funds for such a thing. Sol Young assured him that it didn't matter as the company belonged to her, and she gave him a few more suits to try on. The colleagues spent quite a lot of time in this shopping center trying on a variety of outfits. It was the first time the guy had seen so many purchases at once, and he sat waiting for the woman to return. The boss had a lot of fun shopping with someone after such a long time. This made the woman feel young again while the guy tried to hide his dissatisfaction. Sol Young looked quite young, but in reality she was already quite old, but the woman had no intention of listening to such things. The manager decided to find out how old the director was, assuming that she was already over 30. The boss said that only a person with no manners would ask a girl about her age. Kang Jun gradually became interested in all kinds of anti-aging procedures and would have liked to know the secret of youth. Sol Young had no intention of revealing women's secrets to him, as he already looked young enough. The guy apologized for ruining her mood and said he wished his thoughts were just a mistake. The manager suggested going back because they had bought everything they needed. The boss quickly finished her ice cream, but the guy assured her that there was no need to do so because she could take it with her. Sol Young asked the employee to come to her house because she had something to give him, and she wanted to make sure once again how well the new clothes would fit him. Kang Jun decided to ask again if she was talking about him, but the woman made it clear that there was no one else with them. The girl didn't know what he was thinking, but assured him that it wasn't like that and that the manager wasn't thinking anything bad. When they arrived at her home, the hostess asked him to wait for her in the living room while she quickly tidied up the room. If he could change at the hotel where there were cameras, Sol Young didn't mind. The hostess asked her guest to wait a little while she tidied up. Looking around, he had the feeling that no one lived here. He also sometimes slept in a room inside the office, and this seemed normal to him. Suddenly, he felt a strange sensation overtake his body. Sol Young tidied up and allowed him to come in to try on the clothes they had bought that day. The hostess asked him to change quickly and come out to her right away to show her the suit. Kang Jun compared this room to the place where Maria lived, and this room was more like a hotel room because it was so tidy. Unexpectedly and quite by accident, he noticed the bottles of ether standing on the shelf. The young man realized where the feeling of disharmony was coming from. It was purified core energy, and he didn't understand what it was doing there. The manager tried to touch it, but the girl immediately called out to him, wanting to know why he was taking so long. Kang Jun knew that Sol Young was not the type of person who would take this core energy out of ignorance, and he was sure that his boss had her reasons for doing so. The guy decided that there was no need to dig deep to understand the reason for the director's actions. Meanwhile, Gina was speculating about what the director and manager might be doing. The girl really liked this story, but So Aran simply considered it nonsense. After some time, a social gathering took place, for which Sol Young had prepared Kang Jun. The event turned out to be much more modern than the guy had thought. The party was sponsored by 3 large companies. The woman noticed a slight nervousness on her companion's face and offered him some valerian, but he assured her that everything was fine. The age range at this meeting was very high. There was no one who was the same age as Kang Jun. Sol Young said that only people of a certain status were allowed to attend this party, and Kang Jun was just an ordinary employee. In that case, the boss congratulated him on his promotion without any unnecessary pomp. Suddenly, director Sol Young recognized a woman and greeted an acquaintance she hadn't seen in a long time. The man was delighted that he was still remembered, as he was also the director of his company. Mr. Jin was the CEO of the Roswald Company, and Kang Jun introduced himself to him. The man had heard a lot about this manager, who was the subject of much talk because he had managed to kidnap a Templar and threaten the military. The guy realized that there were a lot of people with bad reputations in this industry. The managers working in the top 3 companies, Leshan, Alphasad, Cloud, were not the best representatives. The security guards did not allow anyone to get too close to these 3, and because of this, the others felt the presence of an invisible wall in the hall. Gina really enjoyed talking to the young people in a room full of old people. The man they had just been talking to was the director of the foreign company Roswald in Korea. His company was mediocre, but abroad it could claim to be one of the 3rd largest management headquarters. It was easy for this company to enter other countries, but in Korea the interest was different, and therefore Kang Jun had no interest in local companies. After that, another stranger greeted them and politely asked to talk to them. The security guard said that Miss Sol wanted to see Chairman Kang Jun, but he didn't know who she was talking about. Sol Young also did not understand which chairman was being referred to, but she did not refuse the offer. The woman realized that she was now talking to a representative of Alpha. The guy noticed a subtle look of doubt on his boss's face as she started to worry about the meeting. Kang Jun also wanted to go with her because not only was she a person of special status, but he was also interested in finding out what the chairman was like. The security guard apologized because the chairman only wanted to see Miss Sol Young. The guy talked about company directors and didn't understand why the security guard was treating his director like a schoolgirl. The manager suggested that his boss go to the chairman's office. Sighing heavily, she asked if it would be okay for Kang Jun to join the meeting as well. The woman advised him not to behave so aggressively, but thanked him for his thoughtfulness. Approaching the office, the security guard announced that the chairman was waiting for them inside. The man was pleased that the guests had finally come to see him. The chairman asked who this guy was, and Sol Young said that he was her manager, whom she couldn't leave alone. The man did not like excessive noise. When there were too many people, it became uncomfortable to talk. Despite this, they had not seen each other for a long time, and Sol Young's face showed her indignation. It turned out that the director of the company, Hero Management, and the chairman were brother and sister. The sister wanted to know what he wanted to talk to her about, but the brother continued to speak in riddles. The chairman asked her to wrap things up and go home, but Sol Young didn't want to. The woman had already told him that he shouldn't worry about her because of work, since she didn't interfere in his affairs. Everything mattered to the brother because he considered his sister to be his family, even though she continued to behave in a way that he did not want her to. If Sol Young needed hunters or managers, she could always take them from her brother's company. Her brother intended to find out how long his sister would continue to fool everyone with her young body. The man was sure that his sister was drinking medicine to keep herself in that state, because even in her position there was enough purified core. The girl said that if he said anything else about her, she wouldn't care that he was her brother. Kang Jun tried to calm his director down. The manager wanted to know how the chairman had become such a big shot, assuming that the secret was to be arrogant and pretend to care about everyone. The man was not obliged to report to his sister's ordinary employee. Despite this, the chairman knew that Kang Jun was a member of an association or something like that. Sol Young heard about it for the first time and became curious about what kind of association it was. The chairman realized that his sister didn't know about it, but the manager must have remembered the terrorist attack on Basilan Island. His sister was sure that monsters had attacked the island, but it turned out to be a lie. The previous incident was indiscriminate terrorism, and it was carried out by the association. People were destroying their own kind, so it should be called an incident rather than an accident. The chairman doubted that those who had arranged this could be called people. The man advised his sister not to think of him as a brother because he cared for her as a senior colleague. The chairman assured her that Kang Jun was not human. Sol Young did not know how to react to this information. According to the man, Kang Jun looked like a human being, but in reality he was not even an animal. Her brother advised his sister to get rid of this employee before she herself suffered from him. Such words only brought a smile to the young man's face. Sol Young no longer understood what was happening. The manager decided to ask if the chairman knew anything about the Dunning-Kruger effect. A person who had only learned part of the information was prone to making erroneous conclusions. Approaching the chairman, the guy made it clear that this man knew nothing. Sol Young tried to understand what was going on between these two, but it turned out to be much more complicated. Kang Jun advised the man to keep his mouth shut and not speak if he did not know the full situation. The chairman found his words a little harsh, but the manager did not seem to think so. After this meeting, the guy assured the director that half of what he had heard was true, and that if he started to explain everything, it would take a long time. So Kang Jun asked if she really wanted to hear this long and tedious story. Sol Young refused, deciding not to get involved in such matters anymore. The guy was glad about this because he was too lazy to tell this long story. The boss hoped that her employee would do the same as her because she also had things she didn't want to talk about. The manager immediately understood that she was referring to the nuclear energy he had accidentally discovered at her home. The guy's rule was not to ask unnecessary and inappropriate questions to everyone. That is why the manager suggested that his boss take care of each other from now on. The woman did not object to this and was only slightly embarrassed when she accepted his offer. Shaking hands, she asked the manager to take care of her. After the circumstances under which an unknown refugee crossed the North Korean border became known, the outsider was arrested on the 16th. However, he managed to escape and was currently hiding in the province of Gyeonggi-do. The outsider was a particularly dangerous criminal, so citizens were asked to be vigilant and cautious. Gina decided to ask the manager who the outsiders were. Kang Jun promised to tell them everything a little later. The video shown was filmed on the border with Russia and featured the outsider himself. A certain person suspected that his actions might be too low, but he did not expect anything from his actions. The outsider ordered his victim to get up, and the video ended there. The government announced a level S danger and asked residents to refrain from going outside and to report any suspicious persons to the appropriate authorities. Gina was shocked because she thought that such things should not be shown on television, but it was a warning to caution people. So Aran decided that this criminal had the ability to return, and the manager assured her that she had understood correctly. Ji-won was curious to know where the criminal had returned from, but Kang Jun was sure that the boy had not heard of this place. The manager decided to ask the boy where the gate appearing in the sky led. The child did not know how to answer, so the guy advised him not to even try to think about it. Monsters came to Earth through the gate from the world of Ishita, and it was also possible to return. There were people who managed to return from the world of Ishit, and so they were called the Return. There were people with powerful abilities. They were the ones who had returned from hell, and most of them hid where they had come from. Ji-won believed that it was good to be strong, but Kang Jun suggested that the outsider had decided to rest because he was tired. However, there were people who could not adapt to the world they had returned to and therefore went mad, and they were called outsiders. So Ahran suggested finding this person, but Jinna immediately said they would not do that. The manager also did not understand why their company should deal with an outsider. The girl didn't know what to say in this situation because their boss always jumped into action in such cases, but this case was different from the ones they had taken on before. The guy assured her that they already had enough to do, because in the Kwanakgu district alone, the hunters had a heavy workload. The team just had to do everything in their power regardless of the work they were given. Kang Jun asked the team not to go outside for a while as the government had requested. After a while, the manager returned home and intended to take a break from work alone. Finding traces on the lock, he asked why someone had entered without permission. The girl did not understand when such rules had appeared in their relationship. Maria assured him that she hadn't seen her old friend in a long time. Kang Jun told the guys to be careful not to fall for such tricks. His friend had heard that their country needed to catch someone, and therefore thought she was the perfect person for the job. Freyr was also a master of his craft, and he apologized for them breaking into Kang Jun's house. The guy advised her to call in advance if she wanted to come to him, but he expected her to show up. It turned out that the two of them didn't come alone, and the owner of the apartment became curious about who they had brought with them. This time, Maria called on 4 commanders to capture the outsider. UN military personnel also arrived in the country, so the headquarters of the Korean hunters also sprang into action. The last to take part in the capture was a top-secret agency. This agency was their team of allies. Kang Jun asked not to be included in this plan. The guy couldn't use the rented apartment as a command post without asking, but Maria thought it was good news. Kang Jun decided to charge them rent in that case. The manager was sure that since 4 commanders had appeared here, the outsider would soon be caught. The girl assured him that it wasn't that simple and asked if he even knew who those people were. The 4 commanders were constantly trying to control each other and interfere with their opponents. It was difficult to call this cooperation. It was more like competition. Maria was glad that it didn't bother him. Kang Jun suggested that this outsider was originally Russian and did not understand why he had to go to Korea. Maria explained that nationality was just a cover because they wanted to attract international attention to this situation. The girl did not think that this man would do such a thing, but she heard that he was from Birobidzhan. The outsider was from Birobidzhan, a city that had been destroyed by bombing due to the invasion of monsters. When he returned to his hometown, he was very angry that the city where he grew up had disappeared, and now events were following their usual course. Maria assured him that if her friend helped them, they would be able to quickly resolve this problem, but Kang Jun refused. The guy had given up hunting and was now a simple manager of one of the Korean teams. Kang Jun didn't want to get involved in anything that wasn't directly related to his team. He simply couldn't afford to. The landlord allowed them to stay, but asked them to express their gratitude to him if they didn't want to work out a plan of action in the sauna. Maria was a little disappointed that her friend had become such a boring office worker. The girl was hungry and asked them to bring them something to eat. Kang Jun ordered them to get out of his house. The next day, the team had to go back to the area to clear out monsters. It was already the 3rd time that day. Sol Yong suggested that this was because most of the hunters from the residents were busy catching the outsider. So Aran understood that they needed to help, otherwise the city would be overrun by monsters, but Ji-won refused because she hadn't eaten a bite yet. The girls dragged him along, assuring him that his noodles would be intact when they returned. So Aran asked the manager to come down quickly because they would be waiting for him in the car. The child begged for some food for the road, but they refused. The boss apologized to her employees, promising that next time she would buy them something tasty. The manager was surprised by the frequent appearance of monsters, but hoped that there would be no more that day. Sol Young thought that the people of Leshan who were not doing their job were to blame. After the news about the outsider appeared, the Leshan company completely stopped going out to clean up. The boss suggested that these people did not want to run into the outsider and chose those they could defeat. Kang Jun intended to finish work for the day and asked to be redirected to a client, giving his mobile number. When he got home, the guy intended to talk to his friends about the outsider. When he entered the room, he couldn't believe his eyes because these two had turned his house into a dump in one day. Maria was happy to see him back because she thought he would be working late. The guy assured her that he worked for a normal company. The landlord tried to find out when they would be moving out, but Maria assured him that they would need some time to catch the outsider. This situation became a nuisance for the hero's management company, as the hunters had a hard time due to the increased workload. As expected, Leshan's firm stopped participating in the cleanup, so the guys worked themselves to exhaustion. Maria thought that all normal organizations found themselves in a similar situation. She knew that outsiders usually destroyed all the people who got in their way. Her friend had already told him about this earlier and therefore asked him for help in dealing with this incident as soon as possible. The girl was sure that Kang Jun's team would like this idea and he himself knew it. The manager did not want his guys to break down from overwork. After assessing all the risks, the guy agreed to help his friend catch the outsider. If Kang Jun joined Maria, he would be able to get rid of extraneous problem. The landlord decided to find out what the two had been doing all day, hoping that they hadn't been slacking off. The girl assured him that she and Fryer had been working tirelessly. The guy managed to hack into the military website and found the necessary information. Fryer managed to open the site for a couple of minutes, and Kang Jun praised him for his hard work. The manager was worried that Fryer's computer could be hacked because of this, but Maria assured him that the guy was a pro and did everything he could to prevent that. The guy made it clear that he had forgotten about this, but assured his comrades that everything would be fine. Kang Jun tried to find out where the team from another country and Fryer's special forces might be at the moment, and Fryer became curious as to why he was interested in this particular information. This information was needed in order to catch the outsider, and then they needed to call Castle and ask them to come if they weren't on an operation. Maria tried to figure out what he was up to and asked him to tell them about it first. The guy was too lazy to talk about it and made it clear that he didn't want to explain himself. After thinking for a while, he decided to tell them about his plan to catch the outsider. After a while, the team of hunters returned from another assignment. They were very tired and hungry. There had been many incidents in their area, and the boss apologized because she did not think that the appearance of the outsider would affect their work. The girls assured her that Sol Young didn't need to apologize because the mistake was Leshen's. So Rand didn't understand where the manager, who was always in the office, had gone. The team assumed that the manager had a lot on his plate, but they were also curious to know what he was doing. Based on everything he heard, G1 concluded that Kang Jun had gone to catch the outsider. This assumption threw everyone else off track because it seemed simply impossible to them. Meanwhile, the military did not understand why their boss would not give permission to capture the outsider, but he did give permission to the guys from GAT. Special Forces Commander Ivanov was indignant about this because he believed that his unit could handle it. The head of the corporation had already explained this to the military several times and did not want to repeat himself again. The head of GAT volunteered to explain the current situation to the head of the Special Forces, Ivanov. GAT did not know how they worked in their own country, but in a civilized country, the laws had to be followed. GAT's team was part of the UN peacekeeping forces, and the Russian special forces were simply a foreign army on this territory. It was assumed that the troops of the neighboring country felt guilty because the outsider was a citizen of their country. Ivanov did not want to discuss international law again, and did not want to give way to others. Chief GAT recommended that his colleague take a day off and assured him that they would keep him informed if anything happened. This behavior on the part of the Allies angered Chief Ivanov, as they were refusing to let him participate in the capture of the criminal. The chief believed that the citizen should die in his own country, as he understood that the outsider could be caught by his special forces. The man began to destroy everything in the office, and the ordinary officers were shocked by what was happening because they were forced to clean up after him. Noticing the commander's monstrous gaze, the guys decided that it was better not to disturb him now. Unable to think of a better way to escape, they left the commander alone. Chief Ivanov understood that nothing would come of it no matter what happened. He heard someone else's presence in the room. The man assumed that this stranger was from the Union, and he was surprised by the military man's insightful reasoning. The military man couldn't believe that this was the so-called cover, so he decided to find out who else was there besides the stranger. Ivanov did not understand why this man had come to him at all, because if he did not like the answer, he would not let him leave. But the stranger assured him that they should help each other. The man decided that this person had come to negotiate mutual assistance, but he was not going to trust him. Such alliances always made tempting offers with a smile on their faces, like spiders waiting for a bunch of idiots. Chief Ivanov was sure that this time they were planning something similar again. That is why he did not want to receive help from people like them. But in reality, the current situation was not very pleasant. Despite this, the man was ready to listen to the stranger, and the stranger decided to tell him absolutely everything. The special forces had the ability to turn others into mutants, but the chief did not understand what he was getting at. The stranger asked to turn someone into former President Nikolai in order to broadcast it on television. The military man did not understand why this should be done, but the stranger linked it to the situation in Birobidzhan. The outsider was aggressive because of the situation in Birobidzhan, where indiscriminate bombing had destroyed the city near the gates. Former President Nikolai had previously had operational authority to make decisions, and the outsider wanted to take revenge on him. It seemed to the military man Ivanov that the outsider would not put on a senseless show because of this. No one had been able to catch the criminal yet, despite the fact that more than one person was chasing him. The stranger assured him that the regime had changed and that in this case, obtaining permission would be easier than ever. It became clear to the soldier that this man knew what was happening in the country. Therefore, Ivanov agreed to his proposal, and the stranger was pleased that they had managed to find common ground. There was one more thing the chief wanted to know from the stranger. The stranger suddenly stopped when he heard the question about Union O. Ivanov was sure that this man knew how much they hated them, so he had to play along. However, they had once been on the same side as the outsiders, and so Ivanov was going to destroy them all. It seemed to the military man that he was standing before Union O, whom he had asked to return to his people and be sure to convey his position that they intended to destroy the outsiders with their own hands. The stranger assured the man that he would not be able to play the clown as he had before. After that, he left the room, promising to report the position of the military from the neighboring country. Once alone, the guy was sure that this man had been keeping everything to himself until now. The person hiding his identity turned out to be Kang Jun, who remembered how Ivanov had picked himself up off the ground last time. After the conversation, he was pleased that the soldier had not noticed that he was Union O. Meanwhile, the outsider continued to roam one of Korea's cities with impunity. The city was flooded with soldiers, making it difficult for the criminal to move around. The outsider had expected this, but everything turned out to be much more serious than he had anticipated, and he had to gradually move to another location. The main task was to remind people of the tragedy in Birobidjan. The criminal thought that he had done enough for today. Breaking news reported that former President Nikolai had arrived in Korea, and this information shocked the outsider. The former president stated that he bore full responsibility for the current incident with the outsider and would spare no effort to resolve the situation. Upon hearing this news, the criminal immediately realized that it was a lie and that they were trying to trap him. It seemed to the outsider that the former president could not be here because the military had decided to joke with him. The man could not stand it and set off an explosion in one of the areas, escaping from there in time. The local military rushed to the scene of the explosion, but upon arriving could not understand what had caused it. After a long time, the head of the company, Lee Shin, decided that things could not continue this way, because their team was very exhausted from catching the criminal. Chief of Operations, So Moonsok understood that the entire situation had fallen on the team's shoulders. Despite this, he was unhappy that the allies had violated the terms of the contract. Director Sol Yong was sure that this was too much, as they were going out on patrol 5 times a day. The man was sure that it was very good when there was a lot of work, because in that case their company would be able to earn a lot. The contract was signed to ease the burden on Leshin and give the employees of hero management work. That is why So Moonsok did not like the terms of this contract, because in the contract they asked to retain the right to make decisions in emergency situations. Sol Yong suggested that this man was willing to let her team die because he didn't want to burden his employees with work. Leshin's chief of operations assured her that this was not entirely true, but the girl insisted that the hunter's job was to protect and preserve people's lives. Sol Young thought it was wrong to sacrifice the lives of another team's employees just for the sake of her own safety. The woman was sure that So Moonsok should be ashamed of this. The man suggested that she could go to the media and publicly accuse Leshin. He had heard that arrogance was in vogue lately. Sol Young had no intention of having such a conversation with him, as she had come to tell him that her employees were going on vacation. Now she needed to go back and buy her people some delicious food for working tirelessly. Before leaving, she assured him that she would not answer So Moonsok's calls. The man realized that this company was not so simple because they continued to stick to their guns, even though their organization was on the verge of collapse. So Moonsok had no other choice, so he decided to call some influential people. Sol Young told the manager about this conversation, who doubted that everything would be fine. There were no problems with the contract, and they couldn't ignore the fact that Leshin was a large company, but the management of the heroes couldn't put everything on the shoulders of one team. The director made it clear that her subordinate should not have spoken to her in that tone. Kang Jun praised her for her excellent work, but she still did not understand how to deal with such a situation. Suddenly, there was a powerful earthquake that interrupted the phone call. The people in that place couldn't understand at first what caused the tremor. Looking up at the sky, they saw a huge core appearing above the area. The manager tried to find out if everything was okay with the director, and the woman asked if he could see the gate. Kang Jun also saw them and intended to call her later, advising her to go to a safe place. The woman suggested that the manager go and clear the gate, but he hung up without answering. The population began to look for safe places in the greenhouse, but Sol Young understood that what was happening was a sign of something terrible. The military reported the emergency to the leadership, and the outsider created a huge frame around the Leshin building. There were too many people outside. According to estimates, there were about 4,000 of them. Some found it hard to believe that the criminal could have created a barrier of such size on his own, but the leadership needed to find a way to eliminate the barrier because people's lives were in danger. Chief Ivanov assured them that they could not waste any time. The others decided from the commander's behavior that he had a plan. Ivanov made it clear that he had already developed a plan and had managed to charge his electric blaster. This option would be much cheaper than chasing after the outsider. The man was sure that if they used this weapon, not only the outsider but also some of the people in the area would die. Chief Ivanov assured them that they had done the same thing in their country. Their policy was aimed at saving the majority regardless of the losses, and the others were well aware of the situation in Birobidjan. It became clear to everyone that this man was not joking, and that he really wanted to use powerful weapons that would lead them to disaster. An SSS-class emergency notification was issued to all residents of the city, asking them to evacuate immediately to specially designated areas. Kang Jun had no choice but to help resolve the situation. The situation was not pleasant, but the outsider had already begun his actions. The criminal's demands were simple. He wanted them to bring him the former president, Nikolai, who had recently been in the news, and he gave them an hour to do so. The outsider had a personal score to settle with the former president, and if they met his conditions, he would leave the country. The criminal advised the government not to do anything stupid, and if they were late or tried to interfere, civilians would suffer. The military noticed the appearance of a gate from which monsters began to emerge. The Knights of Doom could destroy all the people in the area if the government did not meet the outsiders' demands. It looked powerful, and the government doubted that the president was being realistic. Kang Jun was sure that the criminal had already figured out that the president was a fake, and in that case, they could face serious consequences. The manager asked Maria and Fryer to take care of the civilians while he was busy with the outsider. The girl understood his instructions and asked him not to worry about it. However, no matter how much she wore Valkyrie armor, she absolutely hated its design, but Fryer was fine with it. Her partner asked if Kang Jun was sure about himself, since he was only wearing a bulletproof vest. The guy took a pill out of his pocket that could restore the body after injuries. Kang Jin took one pill right in front of them, which further strengthened his protection. The former hunter also sometimes needed to take doping, which made him indestructible. There was still one problem. They didn't know how to destroy the barrier, which didn't look very powerful. Maria offered her companions a solution to this problem. The guys tried to figure out the essence of her proposal, but she asked them to just trust her. The commanders did not expect Ivanov to come to them, thinking that he would blow everything up like last time, but he had thought about it and loaded his blaster just in case. The soldier was going to ignore the stupid provocations of the others because, in that case, his pride might also suffer. Continuing to escort the fake president, they passed through the barrier. The soldiers being assembled intended for the criminal to release the civilians. Suddenly, a rift in space appeared, and the criminal appeared before them, who had no intention of carrying out the government's plan and wanted to kill the military along with the former president. Ivanov advised the criminal to thank Korea for limiting his actions in that country. The soldier assured the outsider that he was lucky to have left the neighboring country, otherwise he would have torn him to pieces. The former president arrived at the criminal's location and asked him to end it. But the criminal immediately realized that there had never been a real president in Korea from the very beginning. The government should have found another person who could play the role of president normally. Ivanov deliberately prepared this mutant for the criminal because he wanted to meet him, but he knew that this would happen from the very beginning. The outsider intended to start a trial against the special forces. He intended to kill them all. Chief Ivanov decided to take care of this criminal himself, asking everyone else to take care of the Knights of Doom. The criminal was surprised that this man thought he could defeat him alone. Suddenly, the enemy decided that it was all because of the situation in Sevastopol. Ivanov noticed that this man was choosing the right words, and it seemed to him that he wanted to know his real feeling. The soldier assured him that if the outsider wanted to die so badly, he would make it happen. Ivanov immediately jumped up and tried to launch a devastating attack on his opponent. The outsider suspected that the soldier would take such a step, so he managed to easily fend him off. The man was sure that this would not work against him, but at the last second he felt the presence of his opponent behind him. Ivanov was too predictable for the outsider because he had nothing but physical strength. The Knights of Doom were S-rank, so the criminal was convinced that the special forces would not be able to hold out against them for long. It seemed to the criminal that the commander would once again have to experience the tragedy that had occurred in Sevastopol. The commander's comrades had died and only Ivanov remained, so he had no intention of retreating. The outsider was sure that the military man had earned his nickname, the Beast, for a reason. Indeed, the man's habits had changed and he had become more like a beast. Freyr understood that the outsider's abilities were now beyond comprehension, despite the fact that he had only recently returned. It was assumed that this criminal had managed to discover a monocore or something similar in the valley. The Leshen building was the center of the rift, and in most cases the barrier had the same functions as a magic core. Kang Jun decided that he should go and destroy this core, and Fryer agreed. In that case, Maria had to try to destroy the barrier while Fryer dealt with the Knights of Doom, thereby helping the Special Forces squad. His partner asked Maria to join him after destroying the barrier. She did not object and was ready to do everything as soon as possible. The most important thing for them was not to engage in combat with the outsider until the mana core was destroyed. The guy asked the girl if she was sure about how to destroy the barrier, but her idea was the only one proposed. Fryer understood that in this case they had no other choice and was therefore worried, but Kang Jun found this unconvincing. His comrades thought that everything would work out because Ivanov could buy them more time. The girl was convinced that Ivanov could defeat the outsider, but Fryer thought it was impossible. As long as the criminal had the monocore, it didn't matter how strong Ivanov was because he wouldn't be able to do anything. The opponent intended to see Ivanov's true nature, which he had heard so much about. The man began to resemble a beast and was about to finish off the outsider. In this form, Ivanov looked more like the destroyer he was, but now he looked as if he had turned his back on people. The outsider condemned him and was going to punish him on behalf of those he had killed, and take revenge for Birobidjan. Ivanov was already fed up with such words. The man threw a car at him, confident that this would somehow stop him. The criminal managed to stop the car flying towards him with the help of his technology. More than 10 years had passed since the incident in Birobidjan, but the outsider could not forget it. That is why Ivanov did not understand how long he would keep repeating it. For the criminal, this long-ago event was unforgettable. The outsider, who had only recently returned, could not calm down, because less than a week had passed since he found out about it. The criminal waited for the moment when he could return again. It was very painful for him to learn that everything he had worked for was a waste of time. Ivanov found it strange because he understood his opponent's feelings. The outsider was not the only one who had lost someone as a result of this incident. The soldier understood him and knew the pain that consumed him every day, reminding him of the day. Despite this pain, Ivanov did not become like this criminal. It was clear that the criminal was trying to direct his anger at other people. Ivanov intended to send his enemy where he belonged. The outsider was convinced that those who survived the incident were just a bunch of criminals and destroyers. None of the opponents were going to retreat and intended to destroy each other. Meanwhile, the special forces fighting the Knights of Doom were suffering defeat. Finding himself in a dire situation, the soldier realized that these were no ordinary Knights of Doom. Each of these creatures was an S-rank warrior and surpassed the special forces in strength. The guy couldn't believe that even after creating a barrier, the criminal was able to summon dozens of such monsters. The military was convinced that they could simply be wiped off the face of the earth in this way. To the soldier's great surprise, the enemy suddenly stopped. Suddenly, there was a powerful jolt that made it clear that the barrier he had created was beginning to crumble. This also distracted the outsider from the battle with the enemy. The man tried to understand what had just happened, because he did not think that anyone could destroy the barrier. The barrier was damaged and began to crack. The outsider became curious to find out who dared to do such an unforgivable thing. While he was busy examining the barrier, Ivanov managed to sneak up on him and deliver a powerful blow. The criminal tried to avoid the attack, but the soldier grabbed him by the collar and was glad that everything had turned out this way. The tragedy in Birobidjan that he had been talking about was to end here with the destruction of the outsider. The barrier turned out to be many times larger than Maria had thought, but when she looked at it from below, it didn't seem that way to her. The girl began to think that nothing would work out for her. She understood that if her suit was damaged, it would entail a lot of expenses. Anticipating further events, she asked her friend to write a check in her name. After that, she headed back to the barrier, trying to destroy it with her suit. The blow was successful and she managed to break through it, but she was unable to immediately respond to her friends who were worried about her. Maria reported that the barrier had been disabled and assured them that she was still alive. In this case, the outsider could not remain in place and the team could not allow him to escape. Fryer had to go inside before the criminal could restore the barrier. Maria did an excellent job, and her comrades thought that they could also begin to act. In this case, Kong Jun asked to be called Union O. This was a very important operation that required extreme caution. Union O intended to enter the building to destroy the mana core according to the plan. Fryer thought that it was time for him to shake the dust off his body after a long time. Meanwhile, the special forces were trying with all their might to resist the Knights of Doom. The military did not understand why no reinforcements were coming to them, since the barrier had been broken. The men were sure that if things continued in the same direction, none of them would survive. After the private ran out of ammunition, he realized that he would not be able to defeat the Knight of Doom. The guy could do nothing as he watched the creature strike him. Suddenly, the Knight of Doom burst into a fierce flame and stopped attacking the soldier. The survivors couldn't believe their luck when they heard that the Alpha team had joined the battle. Fryer, an SS-ranked flamethrower, asked Maria to join him as soon as possible. The guy continued to incinerate the Knights of Doom who filled the area. The soldiers were able to rescue their wounded comrades and move to a safe zone. Noticing Fryer, the Knights of Doom began to attack him again together. Suddenly, Maria's voice was heard asking her comrade to move aside. The soldiers couldn't believe that these two were able to gain the upper hand over the creatures that were pressing them. Maria joined her partner and destroyed most of their opponents with a single blow. Fryer was outraged because he almost got hit by his partner's attack, but the girl asked him to stop being so moody. The special forces had never seen these guys in person before, but they had heard a lot about them. One of the soldiers suggested that these two were members of the famous alliance in Korea. The soldier managed to contact Ivanov, who was busy fighting using telepathy. The subordinate quickly reported to the commander that the Union had joined them. The gist of the report was that Union O had also arrived on the battlefield. Upon hearing this, Ivanov rejoiced because, with their combined efforts, they had a chance to defeat the outsider. Despite this, the commander continued to fight the enemy, who was still unaware of the impending danger. Ivanov intended to deal with the outsider first and then with Union O, but the enemy did not understand what he was talking about. The enemy assured him that there was nothing special about his words, because another character had been added to their game. Meanwhile, Kang Jun managed to reach the basement of the Leshin building. The guy reported his progress to his comrades who were fighting outside. Nothing much was happening there yet, which worried his teammates. Kang Jun wanted this operation to go smoothly, but he had never seen anything like this before in his life. Despite this, the guy vowed to complete the mission no matter what it took. Fryer wanted Ivanov to hold out until Kang Jun could destroy the core. Union O intended to contact his comrades after destroying the core, so he ended communication with them. The lifeless bodies belonged to the hunters who had tried to stop the outsider. The manager did not think that they were representatives of someone's headquarters. It seemed to him that these dead people could have been guards of the Leshin building. Suddenly, near this place, he saw Do Ho-yeon, who was barely breathing and was wary of the stranger in the mask. The guy assured her that he was from the support team and tried to find out what had happened here. The girl and her team had run into the outsider and suffered losses. To begin with, Union O decided to give her first aid and asked her not to move for the time being. Du Ho-yeon would be able to hold on for a while thanks to the drug that had been injected into her body. After Kang Jun sorted everything out, a rescue team was supposed to arrive, and until then, the girl had to wait in that place. Night rank Du Ho-yeon was barely alive, and the outsider turned out to be much stronger than expected. The outsider appeared immediately after the barrier appeared, and just below it, a powerful energy was detected, which was the reason he had come to this place. After that, what Kang Jun witnessed with his own eyes happened. Du Ho-yeon thought that there was something in the basement of this building, and that was why the outsider had come here. The girl was not entirely sure of her guesses, and in that case, she needed to go and check it out. Kang Jun was right, and now all he had to do was go downstairs to destroy the core. The guy thanked her for the information, and the girl tried to find out where he came from, because she wanted to thank him for saving her. The stranger assured her that he hadn't wasted much time with her, and that she shouldn't thank him. After that, he left her, and the girl remained in that place, waiting for the rescue service. The guy needed to find the core as soon as possible. He didn't think it would bother him so much. Kang Jun became curious about how much blood the outsider would shed of innocent people. The former hunter did not understand the difference between the current incident and what had happened in Birobidjan. Yoon informed his comrades that he had managed to find the mana core. Maria asked him to destroy the core as soon as possible because then the skeletons would stop appearing, but it turned out that it wasn't that simple. If the core was simply destroyed, all the accumulated energy would explode and the entire Kanem area would suffer, and in that case, a catastrophe like the one in Birobidjan could occur. This situation forced them to use a technique called Dispel. Maria was sure that it would take a long time, but they had no other choice. Using additional equipment, the man began to extract energy from the core. Kang Jun intended to contact his comrades after the Dispel was complete, but suddenly there was an explosion. The young man realized that someone was approaching him from above and was surprised that the enemy had found out about him so quickly. The outsider couldn't just let it go because everyone who stood in his way was destroyed. While the Dispel was working, Kang Jun needed to stop the approaching enemy. Noticing the destruction of the ceiling, he realized that the enemy was already too close to him. A moment later, as expected, the outsider appeared, who had no intention of allowing the energy to be taken from the core. The guy managed to block the enemy's first strike, and he realized that this battle would not be easy. Kang Jun immediately fired his weapon, but the criminal managed to dodge the shot in time. Running to a safe distance, the two exchanged glances in silence for a moment. Yoon saw the outsider for the first time and realized that his opponent was not bad for a rat. It seemed to the guy that this criminal couldn't finish off Ivanov and simply ran away from him. The criminal noticed a device that weakened his energy core. The outsider forgave them for destroying the barrier, but he could no longer put up with this. Suddenly, someone grabbed the criminal by the head from behind, distracting him from the fight. Kang Jun noticed that Ivanov had come to them and knocked the outsider to the floor with his blows. Ivanov ordered the criminal not to run away during the fight with him, but he did so anyway and was now paying for it. Looking around, he noticed that Yoon, who had previously made a deal with him, was there. The soldier had waited a long time for this day to repay Yoon in full. The man liked to prolong the pleasure during meals and advised the guy to wait for it with impatience. Kang Jun understood him perfectly, but thought it would be best to get rid of the outsider now. Ivanov did not understand why this guy was asking him obvious questions. While the two were busy talking, the criminal tried to strike Ivanov. As Kang Jun had expected, such damage was not enough for a military beast. The outsider intended to deal with this beast-like creature first. The guy was sure that Ivanov had a few words left for the outsider. Although Yoon did not believe this, he admitted that Ivanov had an excellent physique, and the soldier ordered him to stop joking because he did not understand such things. It became clear to the outsider that these two had united against him. Ivanov agreed to deal with the criminal first and then take care of their personal disputes. The criminal doubted their victory because the soldier had never attacked him properly before. The man had no intention of listening to the outsider. He threw a concrete column at him and followed suit. After the column shattered against the enemy's body, Ivanov delivered an additional blow. The outsider did not expect this and did not expect the enemy to be able to deliver such a powerful blow. Such a blow forced the criminal to regroup for further battle. The man did not understand why this mutant did not tire, because it seemed to him that without a source of additional energy, it would be impossible to continue such a long battle. Ivanov noticed that Yoon had no way to escape, but he was not going to share his prey. The soldier was convinced that it was time to end this battle before the main course had a chance to get cold. The outsider advised his opponent to try to do so if he was capable of it. The men clashed again, but Kang Jun was in no hurry to join the fight. Each of the opponents thought they were stronger than the other, so they were ready to fight to the end. Ivanov launched multiple attacks, but the outsider managed to parry them. As he struck his opponent with his weapon again, the criminal noticed a change. Ivanov took on the appearance of a huge bear that intended to finish him off. The outsider's confidence wavered slightly due to the appearance of the beast. A moment later, Ivanov's monstrous power descended upon the criminal. Kang Jun noticed that this soldier fully lived up to his nickname of the beast. Despite the damage he had suffered, the outsider was still alive. The criminal's body was quite battered, but his mouth never shut. He was the only one who had a ticket to hell. The outsider advised his opponent not to rush to conclusions and not to call him the ghost of Birobidjan. Such words could have been true, but Ivanov did not understand what he was getting at. When Birobidjan was destroyed, the outsider was most likely already dead. Suddenly, a magical seal formed around the wounded criminal, forcing his opponents not to jump to conclusions. Ivanov was not going to allow the events of Birobidjan to repeat themselves in Korea. The soldier managed to remind the criminal of something he had already forgotten. The outsider had no intention of ever losing again in his life. He was convinced that he had nothing left to fear. Using a magic spell, the enemy managed to pull something dangerous out of space. Kangjun suggested that it was the sword with which the criminal wanted to destroy them. Assessing the danger, the guy advised Ivanov to duck so that he would not be hit by the attack. The soldier was unable to dodge the shot in time, and his body was badly injured. If the outsider had done this from the very beginning, everything would have ended much faster. The criminal thought and was going to see it through to the end while still alive because that was his goal. However, now he was dead and it no longer mattered to him what happened to his real body. Thanks to the fact that these two gave him a hint, he was going to destroy them and everything here with his own hands. Kangjun did not expect this from the outsider, but he had no choice but to fight this demon. The outsider removed all restrictions from his body in order to fight his opponents with full force. The creature intended to show them the hell it had seen with its own eyes. Union O had to destroy this enemy before it reached such a transformation. The criminal assured them that human laziness and indifference had brought them to this point, because they should not have taken their eyes off him, and now they were doomed to die anyway. Unexpectedly, the guy just laughed at his enemy's words, calling him funny. Ivanov did not know what this form was, but he assured his opponent that he should not consider himself stronger just because he had a pair of horns on his head. The outsider was surprised that this little man had managed to survive such a powerful blow. Usually animals would start shaking with fear and tuck their tails between their legs at the sight of the outsider. Instead, Ivanov bared his teeth at him because he couldn't let such a lucky day slip away. This seemed to him to be useless tricks by the outsider, who was incapable of anything more. Noticing the enemy's approach, the criminal made it clear that Ivanov had fallen for these tricks. Trying to strike, the soldier fell into a trap called the Realm of Darkness. The man was completely immersed in an unknown dark space where nothing could be seen. In the pitch darkness, Ivanov tried to understand what the outsider had done to him. Suddenly, multiple cuts began to appear on his body, weakening him. The man tried to defend himself from such attacks, but all his attempts were in vain. Quite by accident, he sensed the outsider behind him. The outsider tried to attack the soldier, but he managed to parry the blow and advised him to stop using such dirty tricks. The opponent assumed that he was facing the so-called reflexes of a wild animal. Therefore, he decided to start a full-fledged hunt for the beast that was Ivanov. The soldier was a returnee, so he knew the reason for such powerful magic. Such creatures were in no way connected to the system of this world. Ivanov, like an outsider, was independent of time, space, and matter. Suddenly, the enemy summoned parasites, and they immediately filled the space where the man was. The filthy insects began crawling over Ivanov's body, distracting him from his opponent. A moment later, the outsider used the spell of the Whisper of Darkness. The soldier did not understand what was happening to his body. The insects were replaced by water. Then the criminal used the evil spell, which was aimed at destroying all living things in that space. The body completely stopped obeying its owner and began the process of self-destruction. Ivanov fell so easily just because of a few words, even though he was an S-rank warrior. The outsider compared the returned people to maggots, which were helpless bugs. Kangjun decided that it was all over because Ivanov didn't have a single chance of winning. In that case, it would be wise to take advantage of this time because Ivanov would remain an enemy of Union O in any case. Dispel was to be completed, and the guy was very grateful if one of these opponents destroyed the other. Reloading his weapon, he really didn't like what he was about to do. The guy went inside to the two of them and took an aimed shot at the outsider. The criminal did not understand what this man was thinking when he entered, because he would not be able to get out of there. It became clear to the creature that the guy could see him since he managed to attack him, but that shouldn't have happened. Kangjun turned to the returnees who were looking down on their Earth. The former hunter thought that these two had stayed in this city for too long and were the only monsters in this place. The outsider was shocked that a human could see him in this dark space. People lived here who were forced to survive because of the outsider's magical tricks. Kangjun ordered his opponent to stop fooling everyone in this place. The criminal did not understand how the man was able to see him. The guy had the ability to see him in the dark, but that didn't mean the enemy was weak and had no chance against the outsider. Despite this, he was not going to back down from his goal of destroying him. Pulling out his sword, he began to attack his opponent, who deftly dodged his blows. Having been wounded, the outsider decided to regroup, increasing the distance between them. The outsider found it strange that this guy's attacks were weak compared to those of a beast. The guy continued to use ranged weapons so as not to run after him. In such a case, darkness no longer made sense if he tried to strike into emptiness. The outsider called the guy as annoying as the beast, but was sure that it would all end right now. At the last moment, the guy noticed that his opponent was approaching him. The creature tried to grab his mask, but the former hunter managed to fight him off. The outsider assured him that his resistance was useless because it was too late. Suddenly, the enemy used a spell of doom. The mark and curse of doom were left on the guy's body, and there was no way to avoid them. The guy was supposed to die in 10 seconds because he was doomed to destruction. Despite this, he was not going to give up and tried to attack the outsider. There were 8 seconds left, and the enemy did not understand what this little man was going to do. To the outsider, his actions seemed pointless because he couldn't do anything. Kang Jun ignored his opponent's words and continued to fight for his life. The man did not know the reason why the restriction did not work on the returned ones. Ishida's magic was too powerful because, according to the agreement, the returned ones were forbidden to use magic in this place. However, the outsider managed to destroy the agreement and was therefore able to use this magic. The outsider realized that he didn't care at all that he could die for violating the agreement. That is why he believed that the returned ones would never be able to stand in his way. There were 3 seconds left before the death magic affected Kang Jun. The guy jumped up when he had 2 seconds left because he believed he could deliver the final blow. The outsider continued to be surprised by this man's senseless actions. Kang Jun still managed to get close to his opponent and tried to cut off his head, but time had already run out. The creature was sure that nothing could help this guy anymore. Thanks to the Yunyano amulet, he managed to resist death and strike his opponent. The outsider collapsed, thinking that such a thing was impossible. The opponent did not believe what was happening, but the wounds on his body told a completely different story. Kang Jun was surprised that the outsider really hoped he could use such a spell. The guy made it clear that he had prepared in advance for such attacks from his opponent. It became clear to the outsider that this little man was using a resistance amulet. That was why Kang Jun was confident of his victory, and he advised his opponent not to be surprised by this. The amulet of resistance was the first enemy of all those who had returned to Earth. The guy took out his weapon and intended to finish what he had started. Kang Jun already knew that the returned ones used their world as if it were a game in which they leveled up and gained experience. The outsider was not going to give up so easily as he continued to believe in his greatness. Being too slow a mage, everything ended just like that for those who had returned to this world. The enemy did not have time to do anything against the man's attack, which was aimed straight at his heart. Kang Jun summoned a protective switch with his spell, illuminating the entire dark space and directing the attack straight at the outsider's body. The guy managed to catch his opponent and destroy one of the returned. After that, the darkness began to return to the body of the outsider, who was on his last breath. Union O suspected that such creatures would not be so easy to destroy. The outsider tried to find out who this man was and how he had managed to fool him. The enemy began to think that this guy was from the Asura clan, but if he were from there, he wouldn't have had to try so hard. Kang Jun was just well prepared for such a battle. The outsider assumed that this young man was a guardian, but he only advised him to listen more carefully to people when they speak. The returnee did not understand who this person was and how everything could have happened in such a way. The entity used most of its dark magic to restore its body, and now there was no chance of victory. The outsider's dark magic was exhausted, and all this could have happened because of the dispel device. The returned had no choice but to bypass this energy-draining device. The outsider also needed to absorb the entire core to restore his strength. Noticing the enemy's actions, the guy was convinced that he had lost his mind. Approaching the core, the dark body of the returned began to be absorbed by the energy of the magical core. The outsider was sure that this guy was bragging about some nonsense and ended up being no better than Ivanov. Now it seemed to him that the man would not be able to stop him, and the only thing that awaited him in this case was defeat. The outsider was going to destroy this building and everything around it to prove his greatness. The guy continued to listen silently to his opponent, realizing that all his words were wrong. The enemy mistakenly thought that by destroying the dispeller, he would gain access to all the energy of the core. When he touched the device, his body began to react completely differently. Kang Jun assured him that it was indeed checkmate, but an unregistered user had been captured. The outsider could not have predicted this, but now it was too late to change his decision. The opponent, unaware of this, fell into the human trap like the ultimate fool. The returned one could not resist the anti-spell, and his mana fell below the permissible limit. The system informed the outsider that in this situation, the awakening spell could not be used. Kang Jun continued to calmly observe what was happening as the outsider's body began to take on human form. The man's power disappeared and his awakening came to naught. Now he was just an ordinary human being. The returned man refused to believe it because it seemed impossible to him. The guy was ready for the enemy to use the dispel device, but this scenario repeated itself over and over again. All of Union O's enemies considered themselves the center of the universe and believed that everything would go as they wanted. The moment things started to go wrong, they began to panic and make mistakes. Meanwhile, the partners managed to destroy all the Knights of Doom with their actions, proving that nothing in this world could be so simple. Kang Jun tried to come up with a term to better describe the situation of the returned. The guy called the returned ones unreasonable children who had gained superpowers. Union O decided it was time to end this, but the outsider asked him to stop. The criminal fought only out of revenge related to the incident in Birobidjan. Kang Jun should have known about all the cruelty that was happening in Russia. The outsider was fighting in the name of the innocent who had died. The man did not understand who could avenge those who had died in this war, but the guy did not intend to listen to him. The outsider was no different from those he was going to take revenge on, so Kang Jun finished him off. After that, he contacted his comrades and reported the successful destruction of the outsider. His partners praised him for his excellent work and decided that everything was over. Looking at the lifeless body of his defeated enemy, Union O realized that he still had unfinished business. His comrades knew that he could handle it alone, so they decided to help the victims. The important matter was related to Ivanov, who had not been seen in the final moments of the battle with the outsider. The man suddenly appeared behind the guy, making it clear that his battle was not over. Alexei Bogdanovich Ivanov showed everyone that he intended to finish off Union O, but first he wanted to find out what had happened to the outsider. Kang Jun admitted that Alexei Ivanov was incredible, but he was seriously injured during the fight. Despite his injuries, he was still able to stand on his feet because he was convinced that without perseverance, he would not be able to win. The guy was very tired from the battle with the outsider. Usually the returns were the same, but Ivanov's self-confidence was exhausting. The man did not understand what nonsense he was talking about. The outsider simply wanted to show the world his strength, be recognized, and make people fear him. That man could only gain recognition from those with whom he lived in the same city, but Ivanov did not care about what had already passed. The soldier felt that they had something to discuss with this guy. He understood that he was talking about the battle. Ivanov, wounded after Union O saved him, could not forget what had happened between them earlier. The man was grateful to him for saving him, but despite this, he wanted to fight him. There was a problem between Alexei Ivanov and Union O that the former did not want to accept. It was about several people, and the guy suspected that it would come out someday. Kang Jun asked for mercy because he was very tired and had managed to save the weak hunters. The military took this as an insult to his comrades who had suffered for him that day. The guy hastened to assure them that he meant something else, but his opponent was not going to listen to his excuses. Even after so much time had passed, when Ivanov closed his eyes, he could still see the events of those days. The past events were comparable to the Union massacre. Oh, was like a child. Being young, the boy was like a ruthless child crushing ants with his fingers. Ivanov could not forget what Union O had done in Sevastopol, and therefore believed that there was no place for the two of them under the same sun. Such a battle could not be avoided because, in the opinion of the military, it was described by fate. The incident in Sevastopol was a misunderstanding, but Ivanov, after many years, still could not understand this. The guy was sure that they weren't to blame for the incident, but the military man thought otherwise. After the incident, Ivanov learned everything, but now Union O said it was a misunderstanding. Ivanov could not understand his opponent because he believed in the existence of justice. Kang Jun would never have thought that they would be able to talk so calmly. That is why he did not want to fight Ivanov and would have preferred to run away. The soldier continued to be indignant that the death of his men was called a misunderstanding. Kang Jun tried to explain to him that they were here for a single purpose, but now the outsider was dead and they had no reason for further hostility. Suddenly, the building began to shake and collapse. Ivanov decided to destroy the building if Union O responded to his attack. The building was already in a state of disrepair, so destroying it would be no trouble at all. The guy was shocked by such crazy words and suggested they find a compromise solution. Innocent people could remain in the building, and the soldier had to prevent casualties. Ivanov was also a human being and therefore wanted to pay for his fallen comrades. Above all, he considered himself a human being, not a soldier, and he stopped destroying the building. However, if hunting down a member of the Alliance was evil, Ivanov was ready to become a villain. Kang Jun was convinced that this man was serious. Union O was no longer a member of the Union, but the fact that the dog was born wild did not negate the fact that it was a dog. That is why the soldier believed that this guy could only bark and bite. Recalling past events, Ivanov was sure that this was what Union O did best. That was the only reason for his existence in this world. Suddenly, the guy took off his mask and assured everyone that he really hated situations like this. Meaningless fighting was of no use and only posed a constant threat to life. Kang Jun was tired of it and still tried to persuade his opponent not to fight. Wild dogs did not always bark, so the guy believed that Ivanov did not have to do so either. Realizing that he could not avoid the fight, he took out a drug that strengthened his defenses. Therefore, according to Ivanov's logic, it could be argued that even a hunting dog was born wild and could also bite. Noticing how he injected himself with the strengthening drug, he decided that now the guy was not against fighting him. Ivanov was sure that now a fight between the animals would take place. Having regained his strength, the guy had no choice but to fight this man. Meanwhile, rescuers arrived and immediately began evacuating the injured. Sol Young noticed her team, which was safe and sound. Gina was very worried about the director, so when she saw her alive, she was very happy. It turned out that her boss had been there all along, and Gina had worried for nothing. After the hunt, the phone and TV were simply buried, and the director and manager did not answer the phone. Gina almost went crazy with worry. The rest of the team also rushed to them as their anxiety was also evident. So Aran didn't understand where the manager had gone. They didn't see the Knights of Doom, so they decided that the situation had been resolved. Sol Young suggested that Kang Jun was still fighting the enemies because he was nowhere to be seen. Ji Won was absolutely certain that the manager would be fine. The child assured them that Kang Jun was not the type to die in such a situation. Meanwhile, the manager was engaged in a fierce battle with Ivanov. Despite the drug he had taken, it was still very difficult for the young man to resist the soldier. Seeing the increased physical activity caused by the doping, Ivanov couldn't believe that his comrades had been killed by a drug addict. The enemy paid no attention to such statements because he wanted to end this as soon as possible. The soldier shielded himself from the bullets with a cobblestone and aimed it at his opponent. Using his sword, Kang Jun managed to avoid this attack, but he did not expect Ivanov to immediately strike him again. Trying to dodge the enemy's attacks, the manager decided to counterattack. Ivanov easily grabbed his sword, making it clear that all his efforts were in vain. The opponent tried to snatch the weapon, but he couldn't do it, so he started punching. Kang Jun realized that, as expected, this man was much more annoying than an outsider. The guy hated fighting someone who only fought in close combat. Based on Ivanov's actions, he had already managed to come up with the necessary solutions for his victory. Trying to deliver another blow, the soldier noticed that his opponent's movements had changed dramatically. Getting into the blind spot and catching the right moment, the guy intended to deliver the final blow. Ivanov realized that his opponent was using a trick by turning on and off. Kang Jun had been using this trick all along, and Ivanov had fallen for it. If Ivanov had been an ordinary person, their battle could have ended there. However, this man was so powerful that the sword was of no use to him, because he could recover very quickly. Despite his injury, the soldier continued to attack his opponent. Suddenly, he missed, and a cloud of smoke rose around him, obscuring his view of his enemy. He heard a rustling sound behind him and realized that Union O was trying to get around him. Kang Jun was too fast, and the man couldn't keep up with him. Ivanov couldn't find the bastard, but he could see him. The guy was sure that there was no point in spelling everything out and explaining to his opponent. The problem was the flow of mutant senses that Ivanov possessed. Such creatures sensed everything much faster than was necessary. Having caught his opponent off guard, the young man managed to take an accurate shot at him. Ivanov did not understand how this was possible because the longer the battle lasted, the more damage Kang Jun inflicted on him. The soldier was much faster than his opponent, but he still had to endure the damage he was taking. The young man noticed that the man could not understand what was happening at all. An ordinary person would not be able to defeat a creature with such a body. However, at that moment, his advantage was his weakness, which Kang Jun did not hesitate to exploit. After striking, he disappeared without a trace again. Ivanov did not understand how to defeat such an opponent. The weakness was due to the fact that the man was too fast and could not keep track of him. This was called a lack of precise control. At first glance, being faster could seem advantageous in all respects. In reality, speed was only calculated based on movement speed, and therefore the opponent did not pay attention to other more important details. The opponent put all his energy into speed alone and did not notice other important aspects. It was precisely because of the advantage in speed that the opponent did not notice slower movements. Because of this, Ivanov did not understand where exactly his opponent was going to attack. Kang Jun advised him to focus on slow movements and more important moments. Ivanov thanked his opponent for the explanation, and he decided to fight while controlling his speed. The manager had no reason to worry, as he could simply adjust to his opponent's speed. This was the method Kang Jun intended to use to defeat Ivanov. The man thought that the guy would not be able to hold out for long using his tricks. The battle escalated to a new level, and Ivanov began to attack his opponent differently. Despite the new tactics, Kang Jun still managed to get behind him. Unexpectedly, Ivanov managed to catch his opponent and grabbed his sword again. The soldier was convinced that now his technique would not be able to stop him. Noticing his opponent's intentions, the young man hurried to take measures to survive. A powerful blow passed very close to his head, and if he had not dodged, the fight would have ended there. Kang Jun asked the man to be careful because he did not want to die from being crushed by the building. Ivanov thought this was not a bad idea and decided to use it if the attacks did not bring the desired result. The guy's sword was not a winning weapon for Ivan, so he continued to believe in his superiority. The man understood that his opponent had only one blaster left. There weren't many bullets left, so Kang Jun had only a few chances to win. Ivanov was convinced that the guy couldn't do anything with his weapon, or by dodging all the time. The man answered questions that the manager did not ask, but he assured him that Union O was doing the same thing. Kang Jun didn't need much because he was going to destroy his opponent with whatever means he had at his disposal. From then on, the hunt for Union O began. There was a fixed number of bullets that could be loaded into the revolver. Ivanov was sure that when the enemy ran out of ammunition, it would be the end. The man continued to count the shots and realized that with each miss, he was closer to victory. The guy managed to dodge Ivanov's attack in time and tried to shoot him in the head, but Ivanov used a smoke grenade. Such tricks were pointless in a fight where speed was meaningless. The manager agreed with his opponent's words and became more cautious because he understood that Ivanov was close to him. The soldier had previously said that he did not like various tricks and gimmicks, so he had to turn into a fox rather than a bear. Ivanov was sure that he could now deliver the final blow, but Kang Jun dodged it and ended up behind his opponent. The manager believed that an animal like Ivanov should have a good head on his shoulders, and he managed to make a well-aimed shot. The guy understood that even so, Ivanov would not give up, and he should not have asked about it. His opponent suspected that the guy had only 2 bullets left, which would not be enough to finish him off. Union O had never heard of an animal that could count bullets. Ivanov made it clear that these shots would not be enough for his opponent to win. The man was convinced that this long battle would soon come to an end. The guy was not going to back down because of this and continued to keep his opponent at gunpoint. The soldier was actually grateful to Kang Jun for not fully participating in this battle. Such words made the guy indignant, but he did not lose control of the situation. Ivanov warned his opponent that he was ready to attack him. Noticing the enemy's approach, the guy tried to take an aimed shot at his head. The bullet missed, and the soldier realized that Union O had only 1 bullet left. After dodging the bullet, he managed to get close to the guy to strike. Kang Jun was unable to resist this attack and therefore had to endure damage. The activation of the protective force field was timely and successful. The guy noticed that despite this, his opponent was already ready to deliver the next blow. Ivanov's attack was comparable to a cannon shot that hit the guy. The protective barrier managed to reduce the damage from the blow, but still could not cope with the inertial forces. Ivanov was surprised that his opponent managed to activate a force field in such a situation. Kang Jun had one more shot, so he believed that everything would be fine. The man did not expect the force field to appear, but he still believed in his victory. This time, the guy managed to protect himself from the blow with the help of a force field. The soldier assured him that such protection was meaningless in the face of an irresistible force. Ivanov intended to destroy this guy along with his protective field. The guy quickly grabbed his weapon and was ready to fire his last shot. The enemy forgot that Union O had only one bullet left and therefore came so close. Hearing this, the man felt very sorry for his opponent because this bullet would have no effect. The body of Alexei Bogdanovich Ivanov was impossible to destroy. The man began to use the cannon charge technique again and continued to destroy the protective barrier. Blow after blow began to bring noticeable results, and Ivanov was delighted. The protective barrier began to crumble, and the enemy believed in his victory. After the barrier was completely destroyed, Ivanov stopped striking. The man was sure that this was how their battle would end. Suddenly, the guy grabbed his weapon and fired a shot at the enemy, who did not expect it. Ivanov realized that he had one more shot, but Kang Jun had more than one bullet left. After that, he fired several more shots that pierced the soldier's body. The guy advised his opponent to think carefully about what was happening. Using regular lead ammunition for the blaster was pointless. After he reloaded the blaster, everyone mistakenly began to count the bullets. But the blaster held more lead bullets, and so this moment decided the outcome of the entire battle. The guy was going to ask Alexei Bogdanovich Ivanov one last thing. Kang Jun was ready to give him a chance at life if he could score on him. The soldier made it clear that he would never forget this, and Union O had no choice but to finish him off. 5 years ago, on the Crimean Peninsula, in a forest near Sevastopol before the bloody incident, the military flooded the peninsula preparing to attack their opponents. Advancing deeper, the military waited for further instructions from their commanders. Ivanov was convinced that on this day they would finally be able to end the chase. They had been through a lot. A creature called Esperion forced people to follow it like fanatics in order to extract their mental powers. The Esperions used many innocent people as guinea pigs. Union O was sure that his partner should also be more careful with this. Ivanov assured him that it would not be easy to defeat the guys he had personally raised. The time had come to release the dogs, and the military suggested moving forward to destroy the herbivores. Approaching a lonely building in the forest, Ivanov was sure that this hunt would be successful. After that, an explosion occurred in the building, blowing the doors open. The scientists in the underground laboratory did not understand who these people were or what to expect from them. Ivanov ordered his men to destroy everyone inside. The scientists tried to stop the intruders, but they continued to press on. The men tried to raise the alarm and call for reinforcements to destroy the intruders. One of the men only managed to report the unknown group of soldiers before he was killed. After dealing with everyone in the lobby, Union O heard someone calling for help. An unknown man emerged from the darkness and was sure that it was all over. Being under Esperion's control, he began to insult the soldiers, as there were no more victims left for his master. Union O suddenly noticed Alkayev, the leader of the Esperions, standing nearby. Ivanov did not understand why all the people had died so suddenly. It turned out that Alkayev had destroyed his colleagues and absorbed their minds to raise his rank. Union O intended to deal with everyone else and asked the military to wait outside. Alexei Bogdanovich understood everything only after reading the report. From the report, Ivanov learned that this battle was the Union's, but not theirs, and that was how it should have been. Union O managed to capture Alkayev, who had no intention of surrendering. The enemy on the verge of destruction decided to self-destruct, taking the rest with him. A powerful explosion occurred at this location, destroying the military. Leaving the explosion site, the commander realized that most of his squad members would not be returning home. The rest who managed to survive fell under the influence of Alkaev's Esperion. The creature turned people into monsters who abandoned their human reason. Alkaev did this to them before he died. Ivanov did not understand what to do in such a situation. The soldiers were unable to resist Alkaev's power, so Union O was going to destroy them all. The ally apologized in advance for his future actions. The commander tried to stop him because he believed that his men could still be saved. The guy assured him that there was no way to help these soldiers, so he proceeded to destroy them. Union O had no other choice because the guys' bodies had mutated, and therefore their death was inevitable. Before entering the private sector, they had to get rid of everyone. Ivanov couldn't blame Union O for what he did to his comrades. The commander continued to ask his ally to stop, but he continued to destroy the mutants. It turned out that Ivanov had also become a mutant under the influence of Esperion Alkaev. Now the man did not believe that he had returned to what he had lost. Ivanov began to feel that he was much closer to the outsider than he had previously thought. After the battle, Union O reported to Maria and asked her to take him away from this place. Until that moment, Maria had been wondering where her partner could be, but then she learned that Fryer had stayed above. The girl noticed that Kang Jun was completely exhausted from the battle, and she accidentally noticed Ivanov's body. Her partner learned what had happened here and how Ivanov had died. Maria had a lot of information she wanted to share with him, but she didn't want to talk about it all. The girl only said that they had done their best because many civilians had not been harmed. The situation with the outsider was resolved, and the government was surprised that the incident had ended. There were no civilian casualties, but that did not mean that there were none at all. A large number of casualties were among the military fighting the Knights of Doom. A large number of people killed by the hunter were also found in the Leshin building. Special Forces leader Alexei Bogdanovich Ivanov also died, stopping the outsider at the cost of his life. His contribution was actually not so small. The press was busy publishing articles, focusing on the fact that there were no civilian casualties. Russia awarded Ivanov the title of hero for destroying the outsider, and the country's responsibility for the situation was completely removed. People talked about outside interference due to the lack of direct evidence of Ivanov's death and the destruction of the Union's records. Theories were also raised about Leshin hunters who had many reasons to destroy their enemies. None of the survivors revealed the whole truth that they knew. Therefore, Leshin's company suffered the most from this incident. Kang Jun also suffered from this skirmish because his strength took too long to recover. The side effects of the drug affected his body much worse than the wounds, and after frequent use, it was still difficult for him to get used to it. The girls heard something fall in the bathroom and began to worry about the manager. Not waiting for his response, so Aran rushed to him to find out what had happened. The guy assured them that he was fine, but he looked completely different. So the girls decided that he should be taken to the hospital. The manager took painkillers, so he needed a rest, and there was no point in going to the hospital. Kang Jun didn't have any work that day, so he asked them not to worry. The guy felt a little awkward in front of the girls, so he asked them to leave the bathroom. Gina wasn't going to ask the manager about work and just praised him for his good work. The team was ready to take care of all the work until the guy got better. The manager constantly told them how important it was to take care of themselves, but he didn't do it himself. The guy thanked them for everything and assured them that in that case, he would take a couple of days off. Kang Jun hurried to chase away the girls who were staring at his half-naked body, and the team decided to go eat something tasty. So Aran apologized for breaking the door, but the guy asked her not to worry about it. Suddenly, he felt worse and lost consciousness. Luckily, the girl was nearby at that moment. After a while, he woke up in bed and at first did not understand what had happened to him. Looking around, he realized he was in So Aran's room and was glad he wasn't in the hospital. Getting up, he remembered that he had fallen in the bathroom and lost consciousness. Then he saw his savior dozing next to him. The guy felt uncomfortable because the girl had seen him so weak. Kang Jun decided that he had nothing to worry about now because it was nighttime. Despite this incident, he understood that everything had turned out not so bad. Covering. So Aran with a blanket, he returned to bed, deciding to sleep until morning. The others were also worried about the manager and did not notice how they fell asleep on the sofa in the hallway. When he woke up in the morning, the manager tidied himself up and did not wake up the team who were still asleep. The guy was sure that he had caused problems for the guys, so he didn't want to wake them up. The team saw something they shouldn't have, so the manager needed to pull himself together. Returning to his apartment, he noticed that the front door was open and guessed why. Maria decided not to ask her friend where he had been all night. As usual, the two appeared out of nowhere like villains and were surprised to be called that. The guy didn't understand what had happened this time, but his friends just wanted to see him before leaving. Fryer also had a couple of questions for Kang Jun, the answers to which he wanted to know as soon as possible. The guy was simply interested in something that had happened in a recent case. Fryer asked why the manager always tried so hard because in some cases it wasn't necessary. His partner didn't judge him for it because he was just curious since Kang Jun had so much money that he could afford to do nothing for the rest of his life. Kang Jun could have simply not suffered and instead enjoyed a measured life. Union-O had long since left the Union, but he still continued to fight, risking his life. It was difficult for Fryer to understand why he did this, but Kang Jun simply cared about the future generation. His partners were surprised that he really thought about such things. Kang Jun spoke as if he were 50, but he could be compared to a veteran because of his length of service. Maria asked if he was going to prepare for the second coming of Ragnarok. The manager felt that there was no guarantee that this would happen, as the crisis had been contained. The guy understood that because of this, the release date could be significantly delayed. Kang Jun thought he was well suited for his job, and on top of that, he liked the team. Maria was glad to hear that her friend liked his new job, but it was still difficult for Fryer to understand him. After that, they decided to say goodbye. The girl was sure that they would see each other again. It would be great for the manager if there were no more reasons for such meeting. Maria assumed that as long as he continued to do such things, it would go on for a long time. After seeing his guests off, he decided to tidy up his apartment. After that, he met with the director, who was happy to see him but was shocked by the amounts on the documents. Sol Young did not understand that these bills turned out to be unexpected expenses for the efforts they had made to save the director. That's why the woman couldn't react calmly to such statements. The manager was surprised that she couldn't cover these expenses. Her boss could have done so, but these amounts seemed too high to her. The guy assured her that since she was rich, she would be able to pay, but Sol Young was not rich. The woman intended to sort this out within a week. Sometimes she did not understand what kind of person Kang Jun was. Despite this, she wanted to have a serious conversation with him, but he did not understand what it could be about. This time, the manager did a very good job, and the director expressed her gratitude to him. The guy had to do something to keep his job, but if he worked for another company and they saw such a calculation, they would have fired him. Leshin's company suffered the most in this situation, losing most of its hunters. Despite the fact that they resolved the incident with the outsider, they still have a lot of work to do because of Leshin's problems. Sol Young did not think that Leshin would suffer so much because of one outsider. The company management hero was not on very friendly terms with Leshin. All companies will try to grab their share while Leshin is recovering. A battle for territory was looming, and the boss intended to take over the blue area. Recent events proved the ability of their employees. Saul Young thought they deserved to stand above Leshen's organization. The team had been through a lot during this time, and they needed to take advantage of this golden opportunity to gain territory. Saul Young intended to finish off Leshen's company before it regained its strength. The boss assured that she had good reasons for this. Meanwhile, Ho Young returned, and her skills turned out to be much better than expected. The girl was one of the best students at the Night Temple and did not think she would find herself in a real battle so soon. The boy believed that this was a good thing because it was all about success. The huntress hoped that she would be able to be of use as soon as possible. Ho Yan doubted that Leshen's company was a good place to stay. Her partner decided that she was worried that one of the top agencies might go bankrupt, but the loss of 51 hunters was no small loss. An investigation was conducted to ascertain whether the company and its members were responsible for one jurisdiction or another. If Ho Yan became part of Leshen, most of the participants could be distributed. The guy assured her that she didn't need to worry about that because there was outsourcing. There were many hungry agencies, and participants could be distributed to other companies until they got new hunters. The partners had a contract with Hero Management for such cases. Comrades could take any hunter from them to revive the Leshen company. The girl doubted that Leshen could afford it, but the guy assured her that the company had earned a lot before this incident. Newcomers to the company did not have to worry about anything. Ho Yeon decided to trust this manager after all. The hunter noticed that there was too much pride in the guy's words. Ho Yeon remembered that her friend Soe Ran was in the Hero Management company. The new agency had gained fame thanks to its productivity and Lesha's excellent outsourcing work. The girl remembered her last conversation with her friend, who had no intention of becoming a hunter but changed her mind. Despite the fact that the two studied at the same night temple, Ho Yeon had to suffer more. The hunter decided that she needed to be more patient because she would be able to slowly climb the ladder of success, which was different from other poor companies. Thanks to this job, Ho Yeon was able to reach the heights she believed in. Unexpectedly, the car in which the Hero Management team was traveling passed by the car in which Ho Yeon was traveling. Ji-won decided to make sure he had really seen the Leishan company car. So Ah-ron suggested that this company had apparently returned to business. Gina heard that if the hunters stopped operating, they could lose their occupied territory. For the hunters, business was as important as driving was for Gina, and she assured her companions that driving was normal. Ji-won suspected that a collision might occur soon. His partner asked him not to say such things because even though she had a driver's license, she was still nervous behind the wheel. The girl couldn't wait for the manager to return and get behind the wheel because driving in their days was scarier than hunting. So Aaron advised Ji-won to buckle up properly if he didn't want to die. Meanwhile, the director played the manager a recording she had made during the incident. Saul Young heard these conversations and managed to record them herself in time. Earlier, she hid in the bathroom when she heard conversations about Leshen's hunters having bombs hidden in their heads to make them obey orders. The woman was hesitant to leave the stall, so she recorded the conversation. When everything quieted down, she came out of the bathroom and was shocked by what she saw. One of Leshen's hunters had died right there in the bathroom after refusing to obey orders from his superiors. Saul Young couldn't believe that someone had done such a terrible thing in a public place. The manager was quick to say that the case seemed strange to him from the outset. The turnover of Leshen's hunting company was close to 0%, and there had not been a single complaint filed. Despite everything, he was going to check the true circumstances of what was happening in this company. The manager decided to check once again whether the boss was sure about this. She also wanted to believe that it was a mistake, but it was true. The woman had seen it with her own eyes and was therefore certain of her suspicions. According to her, the Leshen company was installing explosives in the heads of its hunters. Such devices were installed to prevent deviations from orders, which is why Saul Young believed that they should get rid of this company. Suddenly, the manager started to get ready to leave. He decided to explain himself to his boss later because he had something really urgent to do. Kang Jun intended to personally verify his boss's words and investigate Leshen's background. The guy understood that if any of the hunters found out about this, they could suffer. The manager remembered Do Hoyon, who was among the surviving Leshen hunters. The hunter was someone who could be in danger, and Kang Jun wanted to help her. Meanwhile, Do Hoyon visited the hospital to have her body x-rayed. The doctor assured her that there was no bomb in her head because he would not lie about such a thing. Upon learning this information, the girl began to feel like she was going crazy. During the incident, the hunter heard from her comrade that bombs had been planted in their heads, and that all the hunters were dying without even starting to fight. The guy asked Do Hoyon not to trust Leshen's company because there was also an explosive device in his head. The facts contradicted these words, so she began to think that she was simply going crazy. The girl remembered that the doctor had also looked at him strangely, so she decided that since most of the facts contradicted the words of her dead friend, she should not worry about her life. Do Hoyon found herself in the company car but did not ask the manager to take her away, so she began to suspect that something was wrong. The hunter decided not to tell anyone that she was going to this particular hospital. The girl decided to ask the driver where they were going, but he was in no hurry to answer. The driver ignored her question, assuring her that her boss had called her urgently and that he did not know the reason. Do Ho-yeon decided that this was a lie because the man's words were different from how he usually spoke. The girl began to feel in danger, but she could no longer leave the car. The driver was visibly nervous and sweating, but he continued to drive her to her destination. Suddenly, she received a message from Kang Jun, who wanted to know where she was. After a while, the man stood alone and smoked, visibly angry about something. Suddenly, Kang Jun appeared next to him and tried to find out what he was angry about. After that, he put a gun to his temple, and manager Leshin realized that their company had been exposed. Kang Jun advised him not to move if he wanted to stay alive. Taking an explosive device out of his pocket, he made it clear that it was not worth treating him so carelessly. The manager believed that this man had crossed all permissible boundaries with his actions. Grabbing the man by the collar, the guy ordered him to obey his orders from now on if he didn't want to die. Kang Jun was very convincing, so manager Leshin decided to obey him. Sol Young assured the hunter that she had made the right decision by asking the driver to stop at the rest area, because thanks to that, they were able to help her in time. No one believed Do Ho Yan, saying that everything was fine, and at some point before this meeting, she began to think she was going crazy. The hunter became a target because she was close to discovering the truth about this company. The girl could have undermined the status and reputation of Leshin's campaign, so they wanted to get rid of her. Now, however, they were facing a monster, a danger that could not even be compared to the incident with the outsider. Sol Young assured her that their company would help Do Ho Yan figure things out and dispel all her doubts. The principal showed her a recording of the conversation, which the hunter understood perfectly, and thanks to this, Do Ho Yan was convinced that everything that was happening was true. The situation was too extreme, so Kang Jun decided to tell her everything as it was. The hero management company needed Do Hyun's help, and she also needed them to take action. The guy showed her the explosive device that the driver intended to activate in an emergency. The hunter realized that this situation would not be easy, as she had nearly died. Sol Young assured her that if she could help them, they would expose Leshin's company. Kang Jun was going to wipe Leshin, which treated its employees so horribly, off the face of the earth.